that he never expected the experience would bring him to new heights of emotional and spiritual fulfillment.
I was convinced that having sex with a complete stranger behind my wife's back would leave me feeling drained and empty on the inside, but my self-esteem is through the roof.
Reynolds, who said he paid $150 for a 30-minute block of time, said that his moderate expectations for the encounter were instantly surpassed by what turned out to be a deeply personal sexual communion that transported him to a new plane of emotional intimacy.
I've never felt a stronger sense of spiritual connection. When our bodies met, there was an immediate sense of familiarity and comfort that just washed over me. I think it was the most meaningful experience of my life.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. The number you want to call is 603-283-6160. That's the number for you to talk about what you want to talk about. Hey, we're going to talk about what we think's interesting, but hey, it's Free Talk Live, so you can control the airwaves. My name is Chris. I'll be your host tonight. I'm joined by
Lori
and Riley.
And we are here to talk about current events and complain about government.
Well, that's what we do pretty much every week. I mean, we try and provide a perspective of liberty on these current crazy events happening in the world. But, you know, we occasionally get mad at government most of the time.
It's kind of hard not to. And
of course not. I mean, of course it is. It's hard to not get mad at a gang of thugs who want to destroy your life.
Here. And I think this time of year, I mean, everybody is really celebrating the picking of a new master.
Yep. They like their slave picking time or their master picking time.
So we've got all the Republican delegates in Milwaukee.
Yep.
Yes, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And I think the Democrat National Convention will be taking place in August. So
after the virtual part.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So I don't know if this is part of the we've got to protect Joe Biden from people realizing he's senile and has been for years. But the Democrats want to do a virtual selection before the convention. So at political conventions, they usually, stand up and say that South Dakota proudly sends their support for Chris for president, which they would never, ever do.
Yeah. Are you sure about that? I mean, you'd be a great president.
I would never be a great president. I would be the worst one.
Why do you say that?
Because I just start shutting everything down. Everything
so the
that
best
would be
one
in my power to shut down, just turn it off. Who was it?
Would you disband the military too?
I would just disband government. I do away.
You'd be like, I'm fired.
So, like, if one could make the argument that you could say, okay, just narrow it down. This is the argument that lots of libertarians make, is just narrow it down to what's actually specified in the Constitution, which does call for a national defense. So you would have something of a national defense. I would, if I were president, boy, this is fun. I would say, yeah, you do need a defense because there are evil people in the world and they might attack you.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a defense. Notice that defense. It's not offense, which is what we have a Department of Offense.
Mm-hmm. Right. They call it
is very offensive.
It is. It's very offensive. I mean, they call it the Department of Defense, but we all know that defense isn't going into countries or in the Middle East and bombing brown people just because terrorism.
Well, all these words always remind me of 1984, and, everything's the opposite. So what do we need to call our war-making department? Oh, let's just say it's the Department of Defense, just to protect ourselves. No, it's not that.
Yeah, the Department of blowing up brown kids doesn't sound as good in the media.
It just doesn't roll off the tongue, Lori. I get that, but... so I would be a horrible president as far as the bulk of the nation is concerned. because I don't think people are ready for that yet. That's why we do Free Talk Live. We talk about these ideas of what would a government look like that had no one assigned to go blow up brown people. If it was just to protect the country, that would be a big change.
Where I would say is, I don't want a government per se.
Exactly.
I would want people to learn how to govern themselves and be sovereign individuals.
That would be preferable.
That'd be absolutely fantastic. But we all know we've been indoctrinated since birth by our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and our great-great-great-great-great-grandparents to believe in this idea that there are people who have some magical ability to tell us what to do because they have a magical title next to their name. And they have magical authority because of their magical titles.
Okay, I got to call it right here, Lori. He's sounding like a complete anarchist. We can't have that, can we?
I think that's allowed.
Okay, good.
This is Free Talk
Encouraged.
Live.
Okay, never mind.
I think it's encouraged.
It is absolutely
We encourage
encouraged.
anarchy here, especially spiritual anarchy.
So
And-
before
Okay.
all of that, though,
Got
people
it.
need to be educated.
I know.
That's the first step.
Yeah,
And that-
education is really important.
And hopefully some of what we say you may feel inclined to dig a little deeper into. And
I hope so.
Yeah, just the question of, do we really need a government, period? You could start off with saying, do we need a huge, immense, centralized government? Is that better than more fragmented governments that all kind of have a common issue, kind of like states? The United States, that's right. We started as states.
We started as separate countries, if you will.
Yeah.
And when Tyrant Lincoln took over, yes, I'm calling Abraham Lincoln an absolute tyrant, especially during the war between the states. I mean, he practically wrecked the Constitution. After that, the country began to be this federal idea, and we had socialists, Francis Bellamy, come up with this Pledge of Allegiance, and ever since then, for over a century, we've had this indoctrination. We've got to pledge our loyalty and our allegiance to a flag and a country, to an idea.
Which is very culty. I don't know how they got that past people in the first place. Like today, if they were like, we've got this thing that we want everybody to chant this magic spell at it every day, everybody would be like, are you out of your minds? We're not doing that.
I think
I'll tell you exactly how it happened. It was during the progressive era.
Yeah.
And this is not progressive like we're saying, liberal progressives, and it's not just liberal. One of the biggest progressives was Theodore Roosevelt, who, everybody talks about as one of the greatest Republican presidents ever. It was the progressive era, and that's what brought things like a Pledge of Allegiance, where you had to swear fealty to a piece of cloth. That's what brought the idea, even though it was specifically denied in the Constitution, you got to go, we have to be able to tax the people.
Yeah.
That was progressive era. The
There's
creation
definite
of
branding there.
Oh,
Yeah, of
Progressing
course.
towards what?
I mean,
Tyranny?
right.
Overlords?
was it Theodore Roosevelt or Wilson that the Federal Reserve came into being?
That was under Wilson.
Okay.
But again, it's all progressive era. And do you think that Wilson was able to get that done without Republican votes? They were all in favor of it. More importantly, many of the bankers were Republicans. They weren't all a bunch of crazy Democrats. They both had a hand in doing it, and that's the thing. When you have government, you'll have factions, and these factions will fight for power. And when they do, they will come up with ways to reward their benefactors. And one of those ways was the creation of the Federal Reserve. And we've been suffering from that for over 100 years.
I feel like the terms Democrat and Republican don't even mean anything anymore.
No,
like
they really
they're
don't.
they're not what they purport to be, at least not the most visible ones. They're so extreme to each side, like the most visible members of these things that come out speaking about things. I just feel like that's not what the terms mean.
I understand that. And I grew up and spent most of my adult life as a conservative Republican. Mm-hmm. And that was when I started. The idea was we want smaller government. We want lower taxes. We want government out of our lives. Those were the talking points. That was it.
And now they're like, we want cops in every bedroom.
Exactly. So I think the Republican Party's kind of lost its way. The Democrats went, it seems to me, I'm sorry if I offend any Democrats listening, but it seems like it took kind of a Marxist turn. They are not the same party. You're not the party of Kennedy.
I see a lot of Democrats now that should just be calling themselves communists.
I understand that. And I see some too that I would say that. I won't paint all Democrats with a broad brush, but this is the problem with identity politics and signing up for one party or the other. You end up maybe not intentionally, but you're furthering an agenda that's set by somebody else. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter which. And another thing that doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat is cancel culture. We've been hearing a lot about this over the last couple of years, haven't we?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody gets canceled, and for the longest time, it just seemed to me that it was all about the left, and they were going to cancel this comedian because he said some things that offended
Or cancel
someone.
some podcaster because he may have said some racist things or whatever, and it's just silly.
It is. But this is an article from Reason from Billy Binion. Getting a Home Depot employee fired is calling for Trump's assassination is still cancel culture.
I agree.
Libs of TikTok is blasting out screenshots of random people's offensive posts to her millions of followers in hopes of claiming their scalps. This was dated today, so fresh off the presses. Chaya Raichik, the woman behind the popular Libs of TikTok social media accounts, has complained in the past about the efforts to, quote, cancel and silence, unquote, her. It appears she has taken a page from the playbook she supposedly hates. Raichik's online operation reposts TikTok videos of left-leaning content creators saying things that often border on the absurd. She has recently upped the ante, amplifying a Facebook post from random people making crass comments about the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump, blasting them to her 3.2 million followers on X, formerly known as Twitter, and tagging their employees in hopes they are rendered jobless.
See, to me, that's just really sad. I realize there are a lot of people who love Trump and believe that he's protected by God. That being said, you know, if you're going to say that people should be canceled because they don't like Trump and they are saying, well, the bullet shouldn't have missed him. The gunman should have aimed better. He had one job. He should have done better. They shouldn't lose their job over. Yes, they shouldn't lose their job over it. It's distasteful speech. There have been people canceled for less. There was this woman who worked for a gaming company. I forget which company, and some liberal person saw that they followed Libs of TikTok on Twitter or whatever, and they got fired for that. Wow,
they got fired for following somebody.
Yeah, it's insane. The idea that I think all Americans believe in freedom of speech.
And that includes
they believe in freedom of their own speech.
They believe in the freedom of their own.
Yes.
Not necessarily, but that's the thing. You can't be halfway. You can't say freedom of speech for me, but not for thee.
They do, though.
Yes,
they say it all the time.
And they do it all the time. And it's not just the left that does that. It's at least one example of it coming from the right. The past tense, here we go. In some cases, it has paid off. Quote, too bad they weren't a better shooter, unquote. Darcy Waldron Pinckney posted on Facebook. You probably don't recognize her name because she's not a public figure. She's not a lawmaker or a bureaucrat or someone in a position of power. She worked at Home Depot. The past tense part here is key. On Sunday, Raichik posted a screenshot of Pinckney's comment, along with a video of someone confronting her in the store and an admonition to her employer. Quote, "Hi at Home Depot," unquote, Rachik wrote. Quote, "Are you aware that you employ people who call for political violence and the assassination of presidents? Any comment?" Unquote.
Well, considering Donald Trump's not a president.
Also, if people are going to get fired for stupid bad opinions, there will be no one working. We'll have a skeleton crew running
Nice.
everything in the world.
Well, maybe government could step in and do all the job.
No, they'd all be fired too. They have the worst, most stupid opinions.
Whatever your feelings are on the former president, cheering on his assassination attempt is, in fact, wrong. It's also wrong to weaponize your millions of followers to turn a random woman into a national pariah, sicking a mob on her and rendering her unable to support herself and possibly her family because she made a tasteless comment on social media. These two things are true at the same time. Cancel culture comes in different forms. This is arguably its purest. We're not talking about someone who wields considerable influence over society, whether in Hollywood or on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. We're not even talking about a public school teacher who said this to a class full of students. We're talking about a woman who worked in a big box retail store whose ability to pay for housing and food is potentially now up in the air for saying something gross on the internet. It's ironic that the people leading this mob are some of the same individuals who have repeatedly and rightfully decried mob justice over the last several years. In some cases, their careers and fame are grounded, at least in part, in this very concept, cancel culture. Riley Gaines, the swimmer and activist who pushed back on biological men competing in women's sports, said in August of last year, I'm losing my spot, Gaines, who had been the target of some illiberalism herself, was singing a different song this week, celebrating the termination of a man whose firing also came at the behest of Rachik.
Everybody has brain rot.
It sure seems that way. It sure seems like they love to go find people to destroy.
They have no actual morals or convictions. They like cheer in the suffering of others, as long as those others are on the other team.
Yeah.
Right. It's red versus blue, and
Stupid.
And America can only have two choices. That's all we can handle. That's all our pea-sized brains can handle is just two choices. If you put too many names on a ballot, we're going to lose our minds.
Nothing will ever get better. Nothing.
No.
If people just continue to be our team versus your team.
Yeah, and
Instead of like, hey, we're all human beings.
And even in countries that have many political parties, I'm thinking of the European countries for the most part. You know, it's never two political parties against each other. It's this coalition of these 4 or 5 versus this coalition of this 5 or 6. And I kind of like that better because at least amongst your 4 or 5 or 5 or 6, you have to come to some agreement on what you actually stand for. So it sort of waters it down and it doesn't make it a binary choice.
Where is it that allows everybody to have their say on the floor? Like anyone who wants to run for president just gets to have open forum? Is it like Taiwan?
I don't know.
I think it's one
That'd
of the
be
Asian.
interesting,
I think it's
though.
one of the Asian countries. So they like everybody at the beginning gets to just get up and publicly say what they believe. They get a lot of weird stuff,
Well,
which is a lot of fun.
I don't think that's so weird.
No, like the people who show up, a lot of because anyone can do it. You don't have to be approved by anyone.
I would want wackos
anyone.
to
Yeah,
show
yeah.
up.
So you get
I
like
want that.
wacky things.
That's-
Could you imagine
It's fun.
having someone run for president on UFO disclosures and JFK disclosures?
people have talked about it. And I'd probably vote for them. I'd love to know what's behind all that.
Me too.
Because I'm not completely anti-voting. I think everybody should vote in things that actually impact them. Washington, D.C., you have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
And you have no voice out of, if you're in a state that has, 20 million people in it, your one vote you never changed an election. You never influenced an election by your vote. It's just numbers. It's numerically impossible. It just doesn't ever happen. There hasn't been a case in New Hampshire of even a statewide election being lost by one vote. So literally, it just doesn't matter. But I'll vote in my school board election. I'll vote for my selectmen in my small town. I'll do stuff like that. I'll vote on warrant articles. That's what in New Hampshire, that's what they refer to spending bills as. They have to be sent. They have to pass the warrant article for any spending. So yeah, I'm really concerned about that. And for the less than 1,000 people that'll vote in my small town, that's something I may be able to sway if I vote.
Yeah.
But nationally, I mean, it's just, there's nothing. So, and it's the one election that everybody gets so worked up about. Everybody can't wait for the presidential elections. And thank goodness we can get rid of that guy and put our guy in, or vice versa. And it's always the most important election of your lives. And
it only changes like surface issues, optical illusion issues, things that don't actually, in the big scheme of things, matter. It's all the same. It's always just a war machine here to milk the citizens. That's all it is every time.
Well, you're going to see 5%. I'm just using that as a number to throw out there. You're going to see 5% of things that happen in D.C. change when Republican switches to Democrat or vice versa. 95% of it just goes on and on.
Exactly
and
the
on.
same. Right. It's just surface issues.
Oh yeah, it's the surface. They're not changing the bureaucratic state at all. They're not changing anything. They're just changing who's the figurehead.
But they're going to have a different take on abortion.
Mm-hmm. For 4 years.
For 4 years and or 8. That could happen.
It could.
But yeah, it's insane, and that's what really convinced me to take a step back from my conservative Republican role and really look at this and go, okay, maybe I should look into this guy Ron Paul just this once. I mean, I've heard he's a crackpot, so what the hell? What the hell? I'll go down the Ron Paul rabbit hole.
And then you were like, oh no, I'm a crackpot too.
Well, when you realize that Ron Paul had the best ideas, then you realize, oh, I'm not as crackpotty. He's not as crackpotty as I thought he was.
Right. And everybody, I hear a lot of people the same story. It's like, wow, Ron Paul, he's really right. And I can really go along with like 90% of what he says. And, if you've come from a Republican background like I did, it was like, well, everything, but, we still have need to go to war, obviously, once in a while. It takes a few years of deprogramming before you get to realize that, yeah, that could be you dying, and it could be someone you love dying, so maybe we should not do that so much.
Yeah, Americans don't know what it's like to have a war at home.
No, they
really
don't. They don't yet, at least as far as we know. We're a half hour into the show, so who knows what's going to happen. 603-283-6160 is our call-in number. This is Free Talk Live.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by that treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash, dash.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. Another high-profile Democrat is now calling for US President Joe Biden not to run in the race. Representative Adam Schiff from California says Biden needs to pass the torch to a younger generation. FSN's Caroline Malone reports.
In a statement reported by US media, Adam Schiff of California said a second Trump presidency will undermine the very foundation of our democracy, and I have serious concerns about whether the president can defeat Donald Trump in November. He's just the latest lawmaker to insist the Democratic Party finds a replacement for Biden after a wave of concern about his bad debate performance in late June. Many people have expressed concern that leaving Biden as the candidate could also lead to many Democrats losing seats in the House and Senate votes in November's election. Caroline Malone, Washington.
At the Republican Party convention, Donald Trump's vice presidential pick, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, will give Wednesday night's headline speech. It's a major moment for the first-time senator, who's been in politics for just 2 years. At the 4-day event, Republicans have rallied around Trump just days after his attempted assassination. FSN's Simon Marks reports from the convention site in Milwaukee.
To put this into its kind of historical context, what we witnessed last night at the Republican convention is extraordinary. Back in 2016, when Donald Trump first became the Republican Party's presidential nominee, he couldn't get leading Republicans to attend his convention, much less endorse him and speak at it. And yet here we are now, 8 years later, and Donald Trump has the entire Republican Party is uniting around him.
Meanwhile, the U.S. House Oversight Committee has subpoenaed the director of the Secret Service, Kim Cheatle, to testify before the committee on Monday. It comes as the U.S. Department of Homeland Security opened an investigation to look at how the Secret Service handled security on the day of Trump's attempted assassination. The agency's been criticized for security failures that led up to the shooting. The United Nations is warning that further regional spillover conflict in the Middle East is increasing by the day. On Wednesday, the United Nations Security Council convened a high-level meeting on the ongoing crisis in Gaza. As FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from the UN in New York.
Addressing the Council on Wednesday, the UN's Chief de Cabinet, Courtney Rattray, stressed that nothing can justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. He says that in recent weeks, Israeli military operations and fighting have intensified across the enclave. Security Council members on Wednesday again called for Council resolutions for a ceasefire to be implemented. Sergei Lavrov insisting the war must end and the collective punishment of the Palestinian people stopped. However, the US told council members that Israel and Hamas have now both agreed to the ceasefire framework.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. 603-283-6160 is our call-in number, and we want you to call. You know, we have our opinions. It's really more interesting when somebody challenges us. And
of course.
We like to be challenged.
I love it.
And yeah, I mean...
Lori just loves to rub her hands together. I love
That's right. I want to fight.
I like it when somebody calls up and gives me something to think about, to question what I believe. That's the idea of me sitting here. It's to hear ideas that do not agree with me. I don't want to live in an echo chamber, and I don't think anybody else out there really does. Well, you do. A lot of people do, but I hope that
nobody here wants to.
Yeah, I should clarify that. That's the problem. I think we live in a world of big, huge echo chambers. Again, going back to left versus right, and Democrats versus Republicans.
When you have social media that's controlled by algorithms, or if you just listen to talk radio all day, you're going to live in your echo chamber because the social media algorithm will serve up anything you want it to serve up, and
it'll serve up exactly what you've been looking at.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll reinforce any ideas you have. So, yeah.
And also, when you just listen to talk radio all day and you don't interact with other people outside that sphere of influence from talk radio, you're going to live in an echo chamber.
And even if you're listening to Free Talk Live, if you're listening to the Free Talk Live podcast and you're going down the rabbit hole and you download all of 2007 episodes, because we've been on the air an awfully long time.
Indeed, we have.
And you're going through all that, you're still only getting the host's perspective and caller's perspective at that given point in time. And maybe that's just reinforcing what you believe. And while that's great entertainment, and I love to go back and listen to some of those old shows, it's not really presenting you with anything new. So we try to do that. It's tough. Sometimes I feel like we talk about the same exact things. Government is bad. Taxes are bad.
Mm-hmm.
People need to realize that they own themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But then I look at it and I go, well, they're kind of truths. They're kind of really how it is. So maybe I shouldn't feel bad about this.
Well, you got to teach people basic truths.
It's always somebody's first show.
Yeah.
That's
you
true.
don't know how long someone's been listening. Some night, somebody's new is going to come on, and that's going to be the first time they hear Free Talk Live.
You're right. You're absolutely right. We've been talking about a story out of Reason Magazine, talking about cancel culture, and in particular, this case where it's not coming from the left, which in my perception, it has generally come from the left, calling for people to be canceled.
Yeah.
In this case, it is, I can't remember her name. I'm scrolling. It's from Libs of TikTok, and the idea that a lot of people, and I saw it on social media too, a lot of people said really nasty things about President Trump after his getting shot.
I mean, I've heard it too, but that doesn't mean I want to go cancel them. I mean, part of me might be really upset, but at the same time, I have to be willing to say, well, disgusting speech is disgusting speech, and I might be disgusted by it, but I can't prohibit it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they can't handle the fact that other people have different opinions. So they just want to shut them down and make sure that only their certified correct opinions can be said.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm thinking a lot of people on the right are upset about the fact that people are saying bad things about Trump getting shot.
I mean, it's a bad thing. You shouldn't call for the death of anyone, but...
No, but I also remember in the early 2010s when a very popular target you could get in most any gun store was of Obama. You could get Obama targets. I saw him in more than one gun shop. I won't say in every one. But in the great state of Pennsylvania, I saw that more than once. I saw a lot of politicians have their own targets you could take to the hunting range or to the gun range, and I'm sure today there are probably Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer targets out there.
Joe Biden,
I guess. I don't know if he'd be awake, or would he be awake as a target?
Yeah, that's like when you go and you pay to have animals in a cage that you shoot, like a big cage, but it's the same thing because
Right.
not really going to get away from you.
Oh my. Here's another example. Quote, "Too bad it didn't hit him square," unquote. Tony Bendelay, formerly a small town firefighter, posted on his personal Facebook page with a popcorn emoji. Rachel got a hold of it and again posted a screenshot to her Libs of TikTok account with a rallying cry to her following on X, where Bendel does not have a footprint. It didn't take long for him, too, to become a national story. As of this writing, Rachek's initial post excoriating Bendelay has been seen 11.7 million times. Quote, "Please accept this as my resignation from the firehouse. I cannot do this," unquote. Bendelay, whose department also received a bomb threat, later posted on Facebook. Quote, "I have been threatened. My family has been threatened. My friends have been threatened. I've never felt so unsafe in my life. It's one thing to ruin my life. I accept that. But to put everyone else in danger around me, to shut down everyone's daily life, This is not okay, unquote.
What kind of reasoning skills does someone have to be like, somebody said that they wished that the shooter didn't miss. I'm going to call in a bomb threat.
You have to remember
and threaten them.
You have to remember, Lori. This is the former president of the United States we're talking about. How dare you threaten somebody like that?
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't even threaten him. He just said, too bad he missed.
Yeah.
But still, to say like, oh, that's a disgusting thing to say. I'm going to call in a bomb threat is also a disgusting thing, like inciting fear like that.
It is.
How do you put those two ideas together in the same brain and be like, that makes sense?
It's a matter of having vengeance. I mean, the right looks at the left and says, oh, these people have been canceling us for years. It's payback time. And so they have payback. So to them, this is payback.
Yeah. And it's...
they love vengeance for some reason.
Well, and I'm not sure. Talking about Riley Gaines, the competitive swimmer. Let's see. Gaines counted that as a victory on Monday. Quote, this wouldn't have happened without Elon Musk purchasing X and libs of TikTok exposing it. She posted on X. Is this what winning looks like? The online defenses of these firings fell mostly into two camps. The first, people like Pinckney and Bendeley, aren't actually victims of cancel culture because what they said was bad. I take no issue with the latter. What they said is bad. But using that as a justification to gleefully destroy their lives is as classic a definition of cancel culture as any. Past victims of cancel culture, after all, weren't all angels. Such backlash often comes after legitimately unsavory or cringeworthy remarks. To take these random people's personal Facebook posts and exile them from society is to invoke a mantra from some left-leaning activist. Quote, it's accountability culture, actually, unquote.
I miss when the internet was all just still nerds. And everybody was like in agreement that if you win a fight on the internet, you're still a loser.
Right.
Yeah.
Quote,
because who cares?
Right. Quote, it's exactly how America should work, unquote, wrote Zach Dean of Outkick, the right-leaning publication typically dedicated to sports news. Quote, checks and balances, folks. Shout out to the Home Depot for quickly nipping this ugly human in the bud, unquote. Perhaps it is unsurprising that the publication itself has repeatedly railed into cancel culture. Quote, the second line of pushback doesn't appear to deny that this is cancel culture. Those on the left just deserve it, the thinking goes, because they've used those tactics for years. When I appreciate the honesty, there are a few issues here. For one, there is no proof that these specific individuals... I'm sorry, my tablet is screwing up. While I appreciate the honesty, there are a few issues here. For one, there is no proof that these specific individuals ever participated in online mob justice. Once again, we are not talking about people who are public figures who have ever had a semblance of a following. More importantly, this is plainly contradictory to the definition of the principle, which is not a principle at all if you decline to apply it when it's inconvenient. Quote, they started it, unquote, is not a justification that has much currency past elementary school, which is a good point.
It is a very good point. Like, this whole stupid argument is just elementary school playground argumentations. It's so stupid.
We are going to quickly go to the phones where we have a caller from San Antonio, Texas. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live.
It's your boy, the emotional genius, the evolutionary capitalist little skeet.
Emotional genius.
Emotional genius.
I highly doubt.
High emotional IQ. Don't you like that, Lori?
Well, I mean, it's not true, so.
It's directly opposite of IQ, you know. It's just irrationality.
Emotional IQ?
I don't want to get...
That's emotionality, not emotional IQ. Emotional IQ is things like empathy and, you know,
you're
being able to interact with others without being rude and terrible.
It doesn't matter if I'm rude or not. What does a valid point have to do whether if I present it in a rude way or not?
Because
if it's valid, it's valid.
Because people won't listen to you if you don't know how to interact with them. And so you won't do anything of any consequence.
That's your emotional fault. Like, I can tell you the truth that'll help you understand morality better. Just because I add an insult like "and crap" at the end of it doesn't negate the truth of it.
If you want to be ineffectual to the general populace that you are talking to, then go ahead.
Well, I'm not necessarily trying to be effectual to you guys, and maybe I'm trying to be effectual to some rare rational libertarian who's
why would they listen to you though?
Economics and
yeah. So if you want to do that, you have to have. You have to have proper people skills in order to talk to people so they listen.
Facts. All I present are valid facts, and you guys never
you presented your
them.
opinions, not valid facts.
They're not opinions.
They're opinions.
I've dispelled a lot of the
no, you haven't.
Economic lies, the legal interpretation lies, Lori's anecdotal lies. Like I've dispelled taxation as theft. I've dispelled the fact that the police do have a job duty. They don't have a tort duty, but they will protect you. And you guys misrepresent all that. But this is what I want to talk about. I wanted to argue about one particular fact that you guys cut me off on last week. Why do you guys keep coming to the defense of the murder for hire, Ross Ulbricht? He
actually didn't get convicted for murder for hire. That charge was dropped.
So let's analyze that real quickly.
Yeah, let's analyze all that.
Let's talk about that one.
The charges were only dropped. There's no reason for them. There's no reason for them to pursue the charges in Maryland because he already got 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole, and he used up his Supreme Court appeal. There's no reason to tack on more years to his sentence and waste resources.
So you're judging somebody for something that they were never convicted of. So there's been no proven conviction that somebody did something, but you're still going to hold it against them. Isn't that what the whole conviction process is about?
They ruled. No, the thing was about kingpinning, and they used the 5 fake murders, the ones that weren't on the imaginary people, as evidence to his criminal intent as a kingpin. And they separated the real murder, the one he tried with a real person, to Maryland because of maybe jurisdictional issues, and they didn't want to contaminate their case for the more important charge of kingpinning.
Where do you get that idea from?
Pretty rational out there.
No,
I actually look at the evidence.
So
I actually look at the rulings and see what rational people actually have to say.
How do you know they're rational
Andy
people?
Greenberg.
Well,
do you know that? So are you denying that he paid for all those commissions, all 6 commissions?
I don't know.
$650,000.
I don't know what I would like to do is I would love to see that evidence. I would have loved for that to made it into the record. All I see is an indictment.
You can look at the blockchain from his Bitcoin wallets. All the $650,000 payments came out of his wallets at those times.
Exactly.
You can't deny that.
I don't deny the blockchain, but I don't see, I've never seen the evidence that this led to Ross Ulbricht sending X amount of Bitcoin to this address. I never saw that. And if it would have been followed through in court, then there would have been evidence presented and things like that.
They did present it in court. The judge ruled on it on the preponderance of the evidence that he commissioned the 5 imaginary murders. For the real guy, that dumb idiot who keeps defending Ross, and that guy's a total idiot, and he's a liar. You can just tell because he denies he even stole Bitcoin. He won't even say it when he's talking about all the circumstantial evidence on why he thinks Ross is innocent. But they had to separate it. Again, there's jurisdictional issues because of where the victim resides, number one. And number two, of course, they don't want to contaminate the better part of their case.
Because they wanted a conviction. I understand that. Skeet, thanks for the call. So I don't always immediately dismiss things that Skeet says, even though it's my natural reaction to just immediately close off my brain just because of how he delivers.
Yeah.
But I think he does occasionally, and I'm just going to say occasionally, throw out a nugget that does make me think. Unfortunately, it's pulling teeth to get to that nugget.
Did you hear a couple weeks ago. I let Skeeter talk when he calls. I don't like hang up on him and stuff.
I didn't say you did.
You looked right at me.
I did look right at you. Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, Skeeter called, and I let him just talk, and eventually he just ran out of steam and forgot what he was talking about because it wasn't actually going anywhere.
Got you.
He just calls to yell at us.
I know he does. I know that. I know that lots of people would love to call and just yell at us, and that's fine. It's crazy, but
I'm sure he could find better use for his time, making his own podcast.
Is he?
I don't think he is, but he should.
He should. I'd listen once.
It's called It's Me, Ya Boy.
Oh my gosh. This article continues, quote, this is, here we are. The second line of pushback doesn't appear to deny that this is cancel culture. Those on the left just deserve it, the thinking goes, because they've used the tactic for years. While I appreciate the honesty, there are a few issues here. For one, there is no proof that specific individuals, I'm rereading this, individuals ever participated in online mob justice. For now, Raychek is undeterred. She has turned her ire towards several others, a chef in a restaurant in Michigan, a program manager at Uber, and more, in hopes she can claim their scalps too.
So she just spends her free time going around looking for people to get in trouble for saying things that she didn't like. What an empty, sad little life.
Well,
go ahead and try to get me fired from my job because I don't have one.
Right. My boss is an asshole. That's only because I'm self-employed. This article concludes, you don't need to endorse their repugnant political statements to hope she is unsuccessful. So I've gone to Libs of TikTok and I've seen some of her posts shared and stuff like that. Some of it's pretty funny only because there's a lot of crazy stuff out there.
I've heard of it. I've never seen it though.
It's usually a little bit of comment that I never bother reading. All I do is I read, or I'll usually watch whatever wacky video she puts up of some insane, like, blue-haired.
I think I saw one of these where somebody was like, "Oh, my pronouns are clown and clown self, and I think I'm a clown." Yeah,
that
you
sounds,
are a clown.
That sounds typical of this, and she's garnered a huge following, and good for her if she got a huge following. I'm just saying you can't rail against cancel culture and then practice it yourself. And I'm glad Reason called her out on this double standard. And, I've seen the same thing. I see the same thing playing out in my timelines on various social media, on Facebook, on X, on all kinds of stuff.
I just do memes and then I'm angry at the government and that's it. And I don't participate in social media. So I guess I don't see this stuff.
I don't participate either. I can't remember the last time I posted anything. I look at memes, I laugh, and I might send, I'll copy an image and send it to a friend of mine. And maybe that's the extent. I just am not into playing your reindeer games. And
yeah.
But people do, and people spend so much of their lives. I was watching the news today. They were talking about a new study out of England that said, I think it's children under the age of 18 who spend 7 or more hours on social media are 3 times as likely to smoke or vape.
Oh, interesting.
I'm like, okay, I'm not sure really how to unpack all of that.
Yeah.
How are they related?
Right. And where's causation and where's everything else? It's kind of silly. Right now, there's a big movement to demonize nicotine because it's...
that's been ongoing for a long time.
Well, it has been. It's an addictive drug. And I say that while I'm drinking coffee, which contains caffeine, which is an addictive drug.
Sugar.
Which can be an addiction. You can definitely become addicted to sugar. So all these things, and why are we focused on them instead of the bigger issues like questioning how come your government is so far in debt for you, those of you in the U.S., and what are they doing with $2 trillion deficits every year?
Well, I mean, these people feel like they can stand on the side of the street and scream at somebody because they're smoking, like, oh, you're polluting my air, but they can't go scream at the government.
I don't
so they feel like they're not effective.
Right. And let me tell you, as a former smoker, I didn't mind the people that screamed and yelled. I hated the people who would, like, walk within 20 feet of me and go,
oh, yeah.
The little fake cough. That was like, yeah, you're the reason I swore I would never quit.
Right, just say it.
Just because of you. People telling me I had to quit kept me smoking cigarettes for at least a decade or two, and I've since quit.
I liked the ones that were like, don't you know those are bad for you?
I'm like, really? Really? You think cigarettes are bad?
I just heard. First time.
Yeah.
Thanks for telling me.
I had no idea.
I'm going to take another cigarette.
Right. But I have that choice. I can make bad decisions.
Sure.
I can say things that are offensive. I can make jokes about presidents being almost assassinated. I choose not to, but hey, I can. And so can everyone out there. You can decide what to say, but you also can live with the repercussions of what you say. If you say something like that in the mixed company, you may get your butt kicked. I'll just say that.
It's just doing things like that where you're canceling other people for saying something just pushes the pendulum further and further towards speech crime.
Yeah.
Like, you said the wrong thing and now you're in jail.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Should we just make it illegal to make jokes about sitting presidents?
No more laughing.
Or former presidents.
No more laughing. No jokes at all about
Yeah.
anything. I'm offended.
That would be much safer.
Ugh.
I think everybody could be happy.
Could you imagine having that kind of world where you can't joke about the president at all? That'd be horrifying.
You've got a lot of countries that is
Yeah.
law.
It's stupid.
You can.
You know, I could
You
really
just might get
imagine.
executed.
I could really imagine some authoritarian dictator president type actually doing that.
Yeah,
it happens.
It happens, and I mean, just in this country, we've had anti-sedition laws repeatedly. You can't say anything bad about the president. We're going to the phones where we've got Dave Ridley. Dave, you're on Free Talk Live. What's up?
Hey guys, you guys been following this new rape center case?
I have a little bit, but we're coming up on a break, so I'm going to put you on hold. We'll get back to you after this break. 603-283-6160 is the number you want to call to get on the air, like Dave Ridley. This is Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. Another high-profile Democrat is now calling for US President Joe Biden not to run in the race. Representative Adam Schiff from California says Biden needs to pass the torch to a younger generation. FSN's Caroline Malone reports.
In a statement reported by US media, Adam Schiff of California said a second Trump presidency will undermine the very foundation of our democracy, and I have serious concerns about whether the president can defeat Donald Trump in November. He's just the latest lawmaker to insist the Democratic Party finds a replacement for Biden after a wave of concern about his bad debate performance in late June. Many people have expressed concern that leaving Biden as the candidate could also lead to many Democrats losing seats in the House and Senate votes in November's election. Caroline Malone, Washington.
At the Republican Party convention, Donald Trump's vice presidential pick, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, will give Wednesday night's headline speech. It's a major moment for the first-time senator, who's been in politics for just 2 years. At the 4-day event, Republicans have rallied around Trump just days after his attempted assassination. FSN's Simon Marks reports from the convention site in Milwaukee.
To put this into its kind of historical context, what we witnessed last night at the Republican convention is extraordinary. Back in 2016, when Donald Trump first became the Republican Party's presidential nominee, he couldn't get leading Republicans to attend his convention, much less endorse him and speak at it. And yet here we are now, 8 years later, and Donald Trump has the entire Republican Party is uniting around him.
Meanwhile, the US House Oversight Committee has subpoenaed the director of the Secret Service, Kim Cheatle, to testify before the committee on Monday. It comes as the US Department of Homeland Security opened an investigation to look at how the Secret Service handled security on the day of Trump's attempted assassination. The agency's been criticized for security failures that led up to the shooting. The United Nations is warning that further regional spillover conflict in the Middle East is increasing by the day. On Wednesday, the United Nations Security Council convened a high-level meeting on the ongoing crisis in Gaza. As FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from the UN in New York.
Addressing the Council on Wednesday, the UN's Chief de Cabinet, Courtney Rattray, stressed that nothing can justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. He says that in recent weeks, Israeli military operations and fighting have intensified across the enclave. Security Council members on Wednesday again called for Council resolutions for a ceasefire to be implemented. Sergei Lavrov insisting the war must end and the collective punishment of the Palestinian people stopped. However, the US told council members that Israel and Hamas have now both agreed to the ceasefire framework.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. A former CIA analyst has been charged with being South Korea's secret agent in the United States. Sumi Terry has been indicted by a New York grand jury for allegedly working for Seoul for more than a decade in exchange for luxury gifts. Her lawyer has denied the charges. FSN's Sally Patterson reports from New York.
The indictment alleges Sumi Terry acted as a valuable source of information for the South Korean government. American prosecutors claim she passed on confidential information to Seoul and lobbied on its behalf. According to court documents, Terry allegedly began the secret agent role in 2013, 2 years after she stopped working for the US government. In return, she was allegedly offered around $37,000 and an array of designer gifts, including a Louis Vuitton handbag worth almost $3,500, Dolce & Gabbana coat, and Michelin star meals. Terry's attorneys have denied the charges, saying the government has made a significant mistake. Sally Patterson, New York.
Elon Musk is moving 2 more of his companies from California to Texas. The world's richest man says he's moving the headquarters of SpaceX and X to the Lone Star State, as FSN's Tony Waterman reports from Texas.
In a post on X, Elon Musk said a new law in California banning public schools from outing transgender kids to their parents was, quote, the final straw, calling it an attack on both families and companies. Musk, who himself has an estranged trans daughter, has been a vocal critic of transgender individuals, and in a biography blamed her progressive school for the rift in their relationship. Texas's conservative leadership have hailed the announcement. Musk relocated Tesla to Austin in 2021 and is himself a resident of the state, where there is no corporate or personal income tax.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Federal authorities are currently on high alert in Washington, D.C., following reports that hundreds of crazed sociopaths infiltrated the congressional chambers this morning. Mary Canley, a Capitol employee who managed to escape the House chambers, described the troubling scene to reporters.
I saw all of them. About 400 to 500 completely deranged people just rambling on about guns, the military, and money.
Investigators say the lunatics, many of whom are believed to suffer from severe personality disorders, have locked themselves in the chambers for hours now, with no clear purpose or reasoning.
I looked at one of them right in the eyes, and it was like he was empty on the inside, devoid of any emotion or feeling. It was horrifying. It's only a matter of time before they do something that really hurts someone.
We believe these men to be manipulative and extremely dangerous. Luckily, they are also very disorganized, and there is a chance they may never be able to ever take any action at all. For more on this developing story, keep checking theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. Hour number 2. Thanks for joining. This is Chris. I'll be your host tonight. I'm joined in studio by
Lori
and Riley.
And we have been talking, we talked a lot about an article in Reason about cancel culture and how it's apparently the left doesn't have a stranglehold on cancel culture.
Nope, it's also the right that does cancel culture too, sadly enough. I mean, we would think that the right does better, but inevitably they fail us. Not all.
Maybe they'll all finally just cancel each other and then everyone will shut up. That'd be nice.
That'd be great. They'll just cancel each other and left with people who just want to live their lives quietly. But first, I do want to remind you that Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash. Tired of the ever-inflating U.S. dollar? You can live your life on Dash with bitrefill.com, where you can buy gift cards from big retailers, including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Thanks to the Dash DAO, that's a decentralized autonomous organization. Thank you for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That is dash.org. We're going back to the phones where Dave Ridley had called in right before break, but he wants to talk about something. And Dave, I'm horrible at taking notes. What was your topic?
Well, I was going to talk off topic, and I still am, but just as long as we're talking about Dash, I just received some Dash on Bitrefill, and it works really well. You can buy Walmart gift cards there. And the MasterCards, I think, may be a new thing. But what's also cool is you can get paid in Dash, and they'll convert it into dollars for you, so you don't have to worry about the price of Dash going up or down. It just sits there like on an Amazon account.
That's very cool.
That's really useful.
Yeah,
and a lot of people do live off crypto. It's not you do not have to use U.S. dollars. They can be converted. I'm sorry, Dave.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but it's bitrefill.com, and it is a real good match for Dash.
I agree. Okay, so what was Go ahead.
I was calling with sort of a belated update regarding the Sununu Rape Center crisis in New Hampshire. This is sort of like, this is New Hampshire's, this is sort of our Auschwitz, basically, the closest thing we have.
Can you give people who might be listening from other states a little bit of background on this whole story, high level?
The Sununu Center, not Auschwitz.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just to clarify.
Auschwitz has been well covered. But about the Sununu Center. What is
the Sununu Center, what it was or is, depending on how you define it, a like a youth correctional facility where a massive number of rapes and sexual assaults occurred.
Yeah.
By the staff, and no one could ever seem to fix it. But it just went on forever and ever, and finally it wound up in court. And I was listening to the Carla Gericke show, and I tend to be a few months out of date when I listen to her, so I don't know how long ago this was, but she's reporting that when they took all these state officials to court, some of the victims, or alleged victims at least, took the state officials to court, there was a process by which these state officials, all one after the other, pleaded the fifth, right, in court, refused to testify, basically, which is their right. But what was interesting was that the jurors were not allowed to see this process.
Wow.
So it's just the latest abuse in this long story of abuse associated with the Sununu Rape Center.
Yeah, and was it just a detention center, or was it also? I need to know more about the Sununu Center. I thought they had something more altruistic as part of their mission, other than just being a jail for kids. They were purporting that, which to me makes it worse. You know what I mean? If you're saying, we're doing a lot of good, we're helping a lot of troubled children at the Sununu Center, when in reality horrible things are happening and have been happening allegedly for years. I've never been there, needless to say. But
I have been there once. I walked inside once just to ask some questions. And it never even occurred to me that it was anything other than a correctional facility.
Got you.
Yeah. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, now a lot has happened since that beginning of the trial. I think the whole thing actually is come and gone. That particular trial or set of trials has ended with an award. So the jury awarded millions of dollars to one of the victims. But the judge just said, "Oh, you're not allowed to do that. It's really just going to have to be $400,000."
I think I do remember reading something about this. There was some cap on how much you could sue. How much you can come up with any number you want. You can sue them for $100 million, but you're only actually going to ever get this amount. Is that basically what it is? Yeah. I think this is a good story to highlight that these types of deals protect government in all 50 states. Every state, it's most difficult to try to right a wrong and get state governments to admit that and local governments and any government. See, we're back to governments again, trying to convince them that they have caused harm. And they will say things like, we were doing our best with what we had available, and, we were looking out for the children, when in reality, these types of things happen. I'm sorry to hear about all of it, but I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised either. I mean, any institution run by a government is going to be a poor institution, and I'm not surprised that sexual abuse and rape has happened in a place that's supposed to treat teens, because those places are rife with corruption. People go there to try and get treated for something, or because they're misbehaving, and all of a sudden they're being taken advantage of. It's really sad.
Well, an institution where your job is literally to have power over children is going to attract people who want that for bad reasons.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and there is, because it's a state organization, there's never going to be any sort of profit motive that is going to lead the employer to choose the absolute best of the best for this particular job. That doesn't exist.
Well, government institutions don't want the best of the best, because then they have to not be corrupt.
Yeah, it's too bad. Anything else you got for us, Dave?
Well, some obvious solutions, allow people like me. Like when I went there, they didn't let me see anything, and I was, they wouldn't talk to me, and there was no transparency.
Wow. There should be some transparency at least.
Let people go. Let people go there and look around. There was, and the other thing is don't don't force kids to go to these government schools, because a lot of these kids wouldn't have wound up in the jail if they hadn't been at the government school where they learn, they learn much of their criminal behavior there, right?
Right. You're promoting long-term recidivism, and I get that too. Dave, thanks a lot for the call, man. Have a great day. We're going to Jet. Jet, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, I thought I'd call in over a couple different topics, but before that, I wanted to mention something. Now, this is not a criticism. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. It seems like on Wednesday nights, for some reason, the microphones are not balanced very well.
Thank
you.
Thanks for letting us know.
There's one person that comes in really clear. One is kind of like off in the distance, and just want to let you know.
Who's not loud enough? Chris?
Well, it all depends. Yeah, mostly.
Okay,
and,
I can turn me up.
You can turn him up. We can have Chris talk louder.
Yeah, right. How's that?
Yeah, I don't know if it's that or those what do you call the pop filters or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if one's thicker or another. It just seems like it's more muffled than the other.
It's probably not me.
So
I have a very
you do.
I have a very powerful voice.
She's a strong woman.
Yeah.
I'm always afraid I'm going to blow everybody out, so I'll crank mine up a little bit.
Okay. So I just tuned in, so I don't know what you've been talking about. Of course, what I want to talk
You
about
just
a couple
called to
different things.
complain about our pop filters and me being too low. Jet, come on, man. No, it's fine.
Well,
I appreciate it.
I try to be helpful.
I appreciate
what I'm
that.
saying? Okay, so regarding the shooting, I'm not sure how much covered already.
We haven't talked about it really at all, so go ahead.
Well, there's some really oddities of this thing that are coming out more and more every day.
Okay.
And the very basic thing, the primary shooter, gets to just kind of wander onto the property with a ladder and a rifle in his hand, prop it up, climb up on the roof. People supposedly did see it and all, and they're going, hey, there's somebody up there,
He tried to get through the magnetometers with a rangefinder around his neck.
I've heard a lot of things. Like I heard that a cop went up there and saw him, and the shooter pointed a gun at him, and he just Uvalde'd back down the ladder and was out of there and didn't tell anyone.
There are a lot of things like that. Go ahead.
Well, just strange things that under circumstances like this should not have happened. One of the main anomalies that I saw was the way the crowd reacted. Okay, initially they seemed to like ducking things, but shouldn't they be dispersing and screaming and running?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I've heard that too, and I don't know that Trump supporters, I'm going to paint everyone with a broad brush here, I don't think that compared to Biden voters are likely to cower and run and create, I don't know. I used to be a conservative Republican, and I likely eventually would have supported Trump if I hadn't come to my senses. I don't know that any of the people I hung out with were the types that would do that. We'd probably more than likely reach for our firearms. Of course, you can't do that in a political rally, but you can find cover.
What I'm saying is these people are thinking that, there were just a few shots, and now it's over, and so everything is fine again, rather than just heading out of town. I don't know, just more things like that are just coming out as questionable, but not important.
No, I think it's worth talking about.
The other topic I wanted to bring up is, how I like to talk about words and the usage of words that we use, in reference to making these groups or these gangs more legitimate than they should be.
Mm-hmm.
I hear people say things like powers that be and use terms like authorities and stuff stuff like this. I think every time we think about those things, we need to modify it slightly, rather than powers that be, the powers that shouldn't be.
I like that approach.
That's a good one.
I'll have to try and remember that.
Or rather than authorities, bogus authorities, or police uniformed or armed abusers, things like that. But
armed abusers, I like that too.
But I had the opportunity. I lost my license. I actually lost my whole wallet full of things.
Sorry to hear that.
About 3 weeks ago. I've never had that happen in my life. But
can't say
I'm
that anymore.
thinking, okay, I'm gonna try to get this thing recovered. The problem is I'm in a different state than the license was issued to, so I've got to try to talk them into sending me something. And of course, they're really not hot on that idea. But still, I was kept saying, Lord, don't let me get stopped during this time. And of course, I've been stopped twice.
Oh no!
And
it's
the last
Murphy's
3
Law.
weeks, yeah. So, I was. I think last time I talked, I was talking about how we can respond to some of these officers' questions, their interrogation, if you will. And initially they come up, why I stopped you? And my approach, rather than just saying, "Hey, I'm not going to talk to you, I don't answer questions," or being silent, I always like to ask questions myself. And so
my question would be, if you don't know, then we have nothing to do, so have a great day.
Well, see, that's a statement, but I try to turn it into a question, like, yeah, and like, I'm, like, don't you know, or something like that. But I wouldn't do that. I just simply say, how may I help you?
That's good.
Because
It sounds good. It's like you're working in a hotel. You're being courteous. How may I help you today? Jet, hey, thanks a lot for the call, man.
Well, very obviously.
Go ahead.
He stopped me because he needed my help, right? I just want to throw out a couple more. Let me throw out a couple more.
Quickly.
So he says, where are you coming from? I say, why do you ask? He says, where are you headed? I say, is that important? He says, do you have any weapons? Do you have any weapons in the car? I say, how do you define weapons? Anyway,
I love it.
Then you say, am I under investigation? Can anything that I say be held against me? That's
right.
That's the idea.
Hey, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Good call.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Jet. Yeah, I mean, people freeze up when they see someone who purports to have authority over them and they say the wrong things. It would be kind of good if we just kind of take a more lighthearted. I know people don't always think that way, but take more of a lighthearted thought when you.
It can be hard when someone's standing there threatening you with a gun.
Oh yeah,
to be like,
and it's hard to
hey,
think
buddy.
in the moment too when you don't have the skills or when you haven't practiced the skills of defying authority. It's hard to defy authority.
Right, but how are you ever going to know unless you start practicing? So
I agree.
Hey, practice in front of the mirror. Practice defying.
Are you talking to me?
You talking to me?
Are you talking to me?
Oh man, we all do horrible versions of that.
We do. But no one hired us for our acting abilities.
Yes. Or our impersonations. Let me see. We're going to go on to another story. Riley brought this one in, which I thought was pretty good. It comes to us from the Mises Institute. Fear is the mind killer. America's dangerous obsession with safety.
The Mises Institute loves to do articles like this, and they do great work.
They do. This is by Artis Shepard, dated 7/16. In modern America, an obsessive fixation on, quote, safety, unquote, has given rise to a culture of fear, paralyzing action and warping decision-making across all levels of society. The condition begins early, with children trained to fear rather than trained to be fearful rather than competent in facing challenges or unfamiliar situations. In their formative years, children are inundated with rules and guidelines ostensibly designed to maintaining safety. but this only stunts their adventurous spirit, undercuts the development of real confidence, and provides an excuse to avoid the unnecessary strife necessary for growth. So I would agree with that.
I would too, yeah.
And it starts very
Mostly.
young. We do try to encourage children to be safe. We get that. But I remember, God, because I just turned 120 years old.
Wow, 120?
I know. I know you guys thought I was older. I
thought you were younger.
I remember when kids rode bicycles without helmets, and now I've seen parents get visited by police officers because their children were seen riding without helmets.
I don't think helmets are a bad idea, but I also don't think the cops should be visiting parents because their kids don't have helmets.
Oh, it was great. And he is a libertarian, which made it even more entertaining when he received that visit from a police officer.
Oh my, I bet.
It was interesting. But yeah, I grew up when we accepted things were dangerous. And, when we were very, very young, my dad didn't put a helmet on me, even when I began learning. And when I fell, I fell, and I didn't crack my skull open or anything like that because the bike tipped over.
Mm-hmm.
It fell, and it wasn't like I was going to land head first. I was going to skin up my hands, probably skin my knee, skin my elbow. That was what I was facing, learning to ride a bike.
I guess maybe like me and my friends were insane as kids because like one of my friends drove his bike into the tree in front of my house and there was like blood all over it and he was bleeding everywhere and it was terrible. And I got hit by a car on my bike and I cracked my skull open on one of those teeter-totter things. Like I just bashed myself all over the place.
Right.
I probably should have had a helmet.
Yeah. And there are times in retrospect.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I would have been wearing a helmet. But you didn't. And our kids, our parents back then didn't obsess over this stuff. My mom probably would have said, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" And my dad would have said something to the effect of, "How else is he going to learn how to ride a bike?" But nowadays it's like they want to make sure that there's no chance of any injury, even minor, which I do think stunts children's growth. Corporations and commercial establishments claim, quote, "Safety is our highest priority," unquote, while failing to understand that statement entails, what that statement entails when taken to its logical extreme. If safety is indeed the highest priority, then we should all stay home and slowly decompose. Without irony, government uses the safety of its citizenry as a pretext to commit brutal acts of war and strip away natural freedoms at the point of a gun. The same is done to provide cover for merging the state with the economy to the detriment of most and the benefit of a politically connected few. It is evident that the pursuit of safety with fear as the motivator prevents one from living a good life, one consisting of productive work driven by the attainment of values through reason and effort, the result of which is true self-esteem. Rather than safety, pursue competence. Genuine safety lies in acquiring skills necessary to deal with life's challenges, not simply avoiding them.
That's right.
I could not agree with that more. And I've been in business for a few years, and I've understood this the whole time. You've got to take risks if you want rewards. 603-283-6160 is the number you can call if you want to be on the air on Free Talk Live.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. ForkFest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. forkfest.party.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. Another high-profile Democrat is now calling for US President Joe Biden not to run in the race. Representative Adam Schiff from California says Biden needs to pass the torch to a younger generation. FSN's Caroline Malone reports.
In a statement reported by US media, Adam Schiff of California said a second Trump presidency will undermine the very foundation of our democracy, and I have serious concerns about whether the president can defeat Donald Trump in November. He's just the latest lawmaker to insist the Democratic Party finds a replacement for Biden after a wave of concern about his bad debate performance in late June. Many people have expressed concern that leaving Biden as the candidate could also lead to many Democrats losing seats in the House and Senate votes in November's election. Caroline Malone, Washington.
At the Republican Party convention, Donald Trump's vice presidential pick, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, will give Wednesday night's headline speech. It's a major moment for the first-time senator, who's been in politics for just 2 years. At the four-day event, Republicans have rallied around Trump just days after his attempted assassination. FSN's Simon Marks reports from the convention site in Milwaukee.
To put this into its kind of historical context, what we witnessed last night at the Republican convention is extraordinary. Back in 2016, when Donald Trump first became the Republican Party's presidential nominee, he couldn't get leading Republicans to attend his convention, much less endorse him and speak at it. And yet here we are now, 8 years later, and Donald Trump has the entire Republican Party is uniting around him.
Meanwhile, the US House Oversight Committee has subpoenaed the director of the Secret Service, Kim Cheatle, to testify before the committee on Monday. It comes as the US Department of Homeland Security opened an investigation to look at how the Secret Service handled security on the day of Trump's attempted assassination. The agency's been criticized for security failures that led up to the shooting. The United Nations is warning that further regional spillover conflict in the Middle East is increasing by the day. On Wednesday, the United Nations Security Council convened a high-level meeting on the ongoing crisis in Gaza. As FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from the UN in New York.
Addressing the Council on Wednesday, the UN's Chief de Cabinet, Courtney Rattray, stressed that nothing can justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. He says that in recent weeks, Israeli military operations and fighting have intensified across the enclave. Security Council members on Wednesday again called for Council resolutions for a ceasefire to be implemented. Sergei Lavrov insisting the war must end and the collective punishment of the Palestinian people stopped. However, the US told council members that Israel and Hamas have now both agreed to the ceasefire framework.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. 603-283-6160 is our call-in number. That's the number you can call and gain control of the airwaves. You can be your own dictator and tell us what we want to talk about. Now, we don't want dictators. We want to have
a conversation with you.
Thoughtful conversations, and we want you to point out where you disagree with us. We love those calls. In studio, it's myself, Chris,
Lori,
and Riley.
And we have been discussing a story on Mises Institute's webpage about America's fixation on safety and how their argument that you're actually stunting development by trying to make everything perfectly safe for children, and that corporations and commercial establishments seem to push this agenda too, that safety is the only thing we have to look for. That's our goal. 100% safety.
There's a balance.
There is a balance. That's what I think our consensus here in studio seems to be.
I see people going too far. It's always everybody just like sees black and white and no gray.
Right.
It feels like I see people go too far the other way, where they're just like, yeah, my 1-year-old can just wander off with no supervision.
Yeah, no supervision whatsoever.
Like, that's a terrible idea.
Of course it's a terrible idea. The 1-year-old doesn't know how to observe the world and hasn't learned how to deal with it.
A little crack cocaine's okay for a 1-year-old.
No.
It's like that. This story continues. In her book, Free Range Kids, Lenore Skenazy discusses her decision to let her 9-year-old son ride the New York City subway by himself.
And that might be okay.
By her telling he was ready, capable, and prepared. So she let him do it, and he did.
Yep.
Her son had just accomplished something of which he could be proud of, and which would be challenging for many adults.
Some 9-year-olds definitely should not, though.
Right.
Also.
Unfortunately, the response to Ms. Skenazy's decision was not one of approbation. National media, so-called parenting experts, and the frightened masses all learned about the event and condemned her. She was called horrible names and dubbed, quote, America's worst mom, unquote, by the U.S. media. The people who attacked Ms. Skenazy view her world as a scary place, one where selective observation substitutes for rational thinking, where the risk-reward equation is reduced to a big neon risk sign flashing red.
I can't even take that seriously. Anyone who says that that's America's worst mom, when there's people out there drowning their kids and like giving them meth or whatever.
Right.
But that's the worst mom.
Because she let her child be a free-range child in a big city.
Right.
Yeah, that's not the worst mom. That's a mom who has a really good relationship with her child.
It doesn't even say like that kid could have gone one stop. Like 4 minutes on the train.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think she like set him loose in like Queens and said, make your way to
go get a job.
To Times Square.
I'm sure she and her child have practiced this very thing, you know, going from one place to another on the subway.
Right. And a 9-year-old is, I mean, do you consider a 9-year-old
it's not a baby.
It's not a
it's not
toddler.
a baby. No. Not a toddler.
Like they can definitely have some kind of self-control of their life.
Right.
And I wouldn't like drop them off in the middle of a city and be like, see you tomorrow.
I'll pick you up, same place.
Yeah.
Be right back here.
But like this doesn't say where the kid was going. He could have literally got on and got off one stop away to go to like see another family member who was waiting there for him at the set. Like who knows what the situation was?
There's absolutely no context to this. Ms. Skenazy highlights the benefits of kids spending time in nature, building skills of self-reliance, and eschewing today's conventional methods of risk avoidance. One gets the sense that children are capable of much more than they're given credit for. Far from pushing them into danger, allowing children to confront and overcome challenges on their own provides the ultimate safety, a true sense of competence. Which is not wrong. I mean, thank goodness I grew up in a time when we did learn things that, like, I couldn't have been more than 10 when I said, Dad, I want to go shooting. Can I go shooting with my friends? And he could have said, no, you're not doing that. It's
too dangerous.
But
guns are dangerous, son. Don't touch them.
But before I left, he was like, you remember everything I've taught you. You never point that thing at anybody else. Never going to do that. Keep your finger off the trigger. All the stuff he'd already taught me, but he just reminded me about that.
Yeah, it's not like you were 10 and he was like, well, you're 10 now, son. Here's a gun for the first time.
Yeah.
Go out and shoot it.
Right.
He had already taught you how to do the thing.
And he did that, but he still, I remember it kind of clearly, he still was very clear about reminding me of all the things he had gone over
10.
a million times. And I get that. I would be the same way as a parent if I hadn't taken my son out and done pretty much the same. My son never wanted to go shooting by himself. He always wanted to go shooting with me, and that was fine too.
It's always good father-son bonding time.
Absolutely. And And this continues. For over a century, the American economy has been subject to the vagaries of central bank control, including the management of, quote, inflation, unquote, poorly defined as a change in the general price level, an absurd abstraction that's impossible to accurately measure, and the overall stability of the job market. Another stated goal of the Federal Reserve was ensuring that, quote, stability of the banking system, unquote. Despite all this, all of the most severe episodes of bank failure in the U.S. occurred on the Fed's watch, including the Great Depression. Since the 1980s, the Federal Reserve has been employing an all but explicit program of bailing out the capital markets, the stock market especially, every time there's a significant pullback in prices. Known as a Fed put, this is an especially sickening example of welfare for those of mediocre ability but the right political connections. While a desire to control and enrich a small group at the expense of the majority is at the heart of the motivations in creating the Federal Reserve or any central bank, the ostensible reason have to do with safety. In the rationale of the state and its adherents, Americans need to be kept safe from high price inflation, bank failures, and other perceived threats of the free market. By this rationale, people need protection from the consequences of voluntarily exchanging goods and services at market prices unimpeded by a bureaucracy, heaven forbid. So this is dead on. The Fed's reaction is no more than an over-reliance and over believing that we can be kept safe and that we can make everything all right. And if you look at the numbers, and the Fed doesn't have many tools in their toolbox. They raise and lower interest rates. They print or destroy money. They can affect the supply, and that's pretty much it. They don't do anything about creating jobs. They can create environments where jobs will shrink or grow, and somehow they think that they can tweak this stuff like it's levers on a giant machine.
Well, and all of this, the safety culture is absolutely manufactured because they want people to treat the government like daddy government.
Yes.
To be there to protect you because we're all scared of everything. We cannot be left to our own devices. We need someone to tell us what to think, what to do, like all of these things, what to eat, what to take medicine. Like all of this needs to be regulated by somebody because how can we be in control of our own lives?
Right. Yeah, that's crazy talk there. I find it interesting that all the people that are like, they love to talk about, America's the greatest because we got a free market and all this. It's like,
well, we really don't have a free market.
No, we really don't. And just as an aside, do you guys take offense to them saying, and this has been lately in at least this inflation, I know they've said it in the past too, but we really need the jobs market to cool down, which basically means we need more people to lose their jobs. We need more people to not have income.
That's a huge tragedy because
that will help us all out.
They're openly admitting this, that they want people to lose jobs. Like, what kind of system is this?
But I didn't say that, Riley. I said we need the job market to cool. Man, I love playing the role of government.
Yeah, but it's the same thing, though. And
it is.
It's these
exactly
stupid
the
word
same.
games that these politicians love to play. And it just gives the illusion to the people, to the masses that are not aware of the language and the wordplay that, hey, when the job market cools, people lose jobs.
Yeah, real people. Real people end up not leading good lives. They have lost their pursuit of happiness.
I don't even know what the truth is with the job market anymore because every day you hear like, there's no jobs. There's lots of jobs. Nobody wants to work. Everybody wants to work, but they can't find jobs. Everybody is in prosperity right now and has the most jobs ever in the history of time. We need less jobs. So more people need to lose their jobs.
We've always been
like,
at
I don't
war
even
with
know
East
what's going
Asia.
on.
I don't either.
Yeah, right.
I mean, if you haven't read Animal Farm, I would highly recommend it. It's a book by George Orwell. And the basic premise of the book is that these animals take over a farm and the pigs take charge of leading. And at the end of the book, you find that the pigs and the farmers and the people that the pigs are opposing or the animals are opposing are all the same.
Yeah. Imagine that.
I know.
Good for you, Orwell. It's very true, and it's laughable how many examples we can point to of government programs that try to do something. And I will tell you, some of them sound really altruistic. They really sound like they have their fellow man, like the idea of keeping us all safe. I mean, who doesn't want somebody watching our back? I mean, that's a good thing, right? If it were just a bit, and if it actually did that, but when government says we're here to help, they don't.
And even we're here to watch your back, but there's like a sentence afterwards that's not spoken out loud, and it is, and we're going to do that by putting you on a leash.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not. Yeah, and their solutions are not going to be something you like. As a result, the central bank and federal government essentially control most of the economy. For single-family homes, 95% of mortgages are ultimately held and guaranteed by federal government agencies. As a profession, medicine has been subsumed by the requirements of the government insurance and research funding. Food is regulated to the extent that obtaining a glass of real milk is impossible in many states. The cost of buying an automobile is automobile are substantially due to compliance with government regulations. No industry is untouched. So it's interesting to read that sentence and think, well, I mean, the government doesn't really have a lot of regulations around TV sets. I mean, right? You can go buy a TV set. I can't imagine there's a lot that has to do with how big a picture must be.
Right.
And then you look at the price of TV sets. Like we're like thinking ahead. We're going to be needing, I know this because my plasma TV is like 25 years old. 25 years old.
Wow, that's old.
It is ancient.
I haven't bought a TV ever, I don't think. Not new.
I don't think I've ever bought a TV either.
So I don't know how much they are.
I think it's actually 15 years old. So I'm exaggerating because it's radio and you have to exaggerate.
you got to embellish the story a little bit.
But a 15-year-old TV, I know it's going to break. So I'm at that point where, I kind of look at what's available now. And it's a 40-inch TV. And now I was just in Walmart this morning and I was looking at 54-inch TVs for about $300. I paid like $1,200 for this thing.
$300 for a 54-inch TV sounds like a really good price.
It's a good price.
I don't know.
But the idea that a 40-inch TV 15 years ago was over $1,000.
Was it when plasma TVs were brand new, though? New tech always costs more.
Well, yeah, it was new back then, but the idea, here you have an industry that is very lightly regulated. I have no doubt that the TV industry has some regulations. It's being touched somehow, but it's not being touched like mortgages. It's not being touched like medicine.
No, like manufacturing is being touched the opposite way because all the jobs are being outsourced to countries where, they're using like 6-year-old Indian kids to put them together and then they ship them back here.
Right.
And sell them to you.
Sell it to me for,
for super cheap.
For a couple $100 for something that's much better. Is that always a bad thing? What I'm trying to point out is that industries that are less involved with government and less regulation do much better, and they benefit me, the consumer, much more than healthcare is just insane.
Mm-hmm. The reason why healthcare is so expensive is because of the regulations. The regulatory burdens on healthcare right now in America are creating such epic costs.
I think that's what he was saying, though.
Yeah.
Because of the regulation.
And you can look at any industry that's heavily regulated. Banking, you can look at mortgages. I mean, like, like the article points out, 95% of all mortgages are held and guaranteed by the federal government. That's insane. There was a time when we had banks, and banks looked at a mortgage and determined what the risk was and how much somebody had skin in the game, how much of a down payment they could put on. And now it's like basically to buy votes, and that's it. We'll come up with a house for everybody. But the government, which is now running $2 trillion deficits every year, that's not true. I'm exaggerating again. It's $1.9 trillion projected.
But
that's not even close, Chris.
That's way off, Chris. Just a $0.1 trillion.
And that's the thing. And the cost of a car, it's my wife has been having a conversation with her mother, who is now 92 and in the throes of dementia. Talking about new cars and things like that. And her mother's, of the belief that, a couple $1,000s, you can get a nice new car. And it's like, now you can get a new car for about $30,000. You can still find something, maybe 27, but new cars are $30,000 up. And I remember, people talking about buying a $20,000 car, and that was crazy talk. It's like, what, a Lamborghini? What are you talking about here?
Yeah, back in the day.
I'm a terrible consumer. I don't buy any. I don't know how much anything is. Like, our truck is so old. It's like a 2000 Suburban. And we paid like $1,500 for it, and just drive it. Just drive it until it drives it into the ground.
Exactly. And then you'll find another.
And just fix it when it breaks.
A 10 or 20-year-old car. That's nothing wrong with that.
I also don't want a car with a computer in it. So
that's going to be difficult for you. Probably for your next one. It's going to be really difficult.
You have to get a classic car.
Exactly.
And I have to just, go get myself a really nice old Corvette or something.
You'll get the antique plates, though. The story continues. As with the creation of a central bank, the forceful redistribution of capital from the capable and driven to the incapable and indolent is an attempt to remove the risk of failure from favored groups. Tellingly, these programs are referred to as, quote, safety nets, unquote. What the welfare state accomplishes, however, is the elevation of weakness as a character trait. Rather than allowing the freedom to achieve, the state acts as a mother with Munchausen syndrome by proxy, facilitating the dependency and helplessness of its wards so as to increase its own relevance via the caretaking process. In keeping with the role as the oppressive mother, one result is that fatherhood has become non-existent, particularly in those groups most reliant on welfare. The destruction of the productive spirit is nowhere more obvious than in those reliant on government handouts who have attempted to trade independence for safety, but end up with neither. So I can see a lot of truth in that.
I clicked on the link for fatherlessness has become non-existent because I was like, is that hyperbole or is that... It says more than 20 million children live in a home without the physical presence of a father. That's a lot of kids without a father. Whoa.
I don't doubt that at all.
I did not expect that to be such a large portion.
Right. And as this article talks about, and if I'd love to see the statistics, and I'm sure it would support this, that lower class and lower, I can't really say lower class because that's implying they don't have class. They absolutely do. But people who are in need of government assistance undoubtedly have higher rates of no parent or no father in the home.
Why do you need a dad when you have daddy government?
Exactly.
Well, don't you want everybody to just have everything and not work for it?
Nope.
Exactly. We've got an unscreened wireless caller on the line. Wireless caller, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, I want to bring something up. A lot of the Republicans are saying about the assassination attempt that the hand of God intervened and saved Donald Trump.
I've heard that.
I've seen some memes.
I think it's an interesting story. I mean, they love to think that God loves Trump, but there was someone else who died there too. Does God not love that person?
Yeah, I guess that guy was bad, huh?
Here's the part. Let me point this out. That on July 21st, 1944, Anne Frank wrote in her diary right after an assassination attempt against Hitler, saying that the Fuhrer's life was saved by divine providence. He survived, unfortunately, with only minor burns and scrapes.
Huh.
Okay, so
I guess Hitler was protected by God?
I mean, Trump is just as good a statesman as Hitler, right?
I don't know about that.
Some people would agree with that.
So, I just want to say, like, that's the diary of Anne Frank on July 21st, 1944. Look it up. It's in the first paragraph of that entry.
Interesting.
God, you had me looking at a calendar going, so that's the anniversary of that's got to be soon.
Where were you that year?
1944? Going to college. I'm kidding. Hey, thanks for the call, man. That's interesting. I've seen
it's definitely interesting.
I've seen a lot of posts on social media where they're like, Jesus behind Trump hugging him, and like
it's propaganda. It's a propaganda story. That's all it is. It's a propaganda story.
Well, I find it interesting that people, and to be fair, I'm sure that a lot of the people I see posting these are posting them sort of tongue in cheek. But there are a lot of people out there that feel that Trump is somehow a savior, and I know a lot of evangelical Christians who do believe that, he's been chosen by God to be president. Like if God is making decisions on behalf of us, then God must be a Trump fan. And I don't get that. I don't get that any politician, like, I look at the New Testament and I don't see a lot in there that's really positive about government.
I hate when people use the arguments like, oh, God stopped him. Like, oh, but little Timmy with leukemia.
Right.
Screw him, right? Like,
it's God's will that Timmy with leukemia dies, I guess.
Yep. Timmy's done. He was useless.
There
God
must be opposition in all things, of course.
Yeah. And
it's such a silly
I think
argument.
It's a cop-out argument to try and explain the unexplainable, because
I mean, it's not really unexplainable. The guy just missed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Trump turned his head. I saw the video. He turned his head a little bit, and if he hadn't, he would have gotten a headshot. And that's all it is. It's just purely coincidental, by chance.
God moved Donald Trump's head.
No,
no,
Donald Trump did. He has control of his own muscles in his neck. I'm fairly sure that he's not like a puppet on strings.
We are going to debate whether Donald Trump is truly a puppet on strings or not. 603-283-6160 is our phone number. This is Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.fm.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. Another high-profile Democrat is now calling for U.S. President Joe Biden not to run in the race. Representative Adam Schiff from California says Biden needs to pass the torch to a younger generation. FSN's Caroline Malone reports.
In a statement reported by US media, Adam Schiff of California said a second Trump presidency will undermine the very foundation of our democracy, and I have serious concerns about whether the president can defeat Donald Trump in November. He's just the latest lawmaker to insist the Democratic Party finds a replacement for Biden after a wave of concern about his bad debate performance in late June. Many people have expressed concern that leaving Biden as the candidate could also lead to many Democrats losing seats in the House and Senate votes in November's election. Caroline Malone, Washington.
At the Republican Party convention, Donald Trump's vice presidential pick, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, will give Wednesday night's headline speech. It's a major moment for the first-time senator, who's been in politics for just 2 years. At the 4-day event, Republicans have rallied around Trump just days after his attempted assassination. FSN's Simon Marks reports from the convention site in Milwaukee.
To put this into its kind of historical context, what we witnessed last night at the Republican convention is extraordinary. Back in 2016, when Donald Trump first became the Republican Party's presidential nominee, he couldn't get leading Republicans to attend his convention, much less endorse him and speak at it. And yet here we are now, 8 years later, and Donald Trump has the entire Republican Party is uniting around him.
Meanwhile, the U.S. House Oversight Committee has subpoenaed the director of the Secret Service, Kim Cheatle, to testify before the committee on Monday. It comes as the U.S. Department of Homeland Security opened an investigation to look at how the Secret Service handled security on the day of Trump's attempted assassination. The agency's been criticized for security failures that led up to the shooting. The United Nations is warning that further regional spillover conflict in the Middle East is increasing by the day. On Wednesday, the United Nations Security Council convened a high-level meeting on the ongoing crisis in Gaza. As FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from the UN in New York.
Addressing the Council on Wednesday, the UN's Chief de Cabinet, Courtney Rattray, stressed that nothing can justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. He says that in recent weeks, Israeli military operations and fighting have intensified across the enclave. Security Council members on Wednesday again called for Council resolutions for a ceasefire to be implemented. Sergei Lavrov insisting the war must end and the collective punishment of the Palestinian people stopped. However, the US told council members that Israel and Hamas have now both agreed to the ceasefire framework.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. A former CIA analyst has been charged with being South Korea's secret agent in the United States. Sumi Terry has been indicted by a New York grand jury for allegedly working for Seoul for more than a decade in exchange for luxury gifts. Her lawyer has denied the charges. FSN's Sally Patterson reports from New York.
The indictment alleges Sumi Terry acted as a valuable source of information for the South Korean government. American prosecutors claim she passed on confidential information to Seoul and lobbied on its behalf. According to court documents, Terry allegedly began the secret agent role in 2013, 2 years after she stopped working for the US government. In return, she was allegedly offered around $37,000 and an array of designer gifts, including a Louis Vuitton handbag worth almost $3,500, Dolce & Gabbana coat, and Michelin-star meals. Terry's attorneys have denied the charges, saying the government has made a significant mistake. Sally Patterson, New York.
Elon Musk is moving 2 more of his companies from California to Texas. The world's richest man says he's moving the headquarters of SpaceX and X to the Lone Star State, as FSN's Tony Waterman reports from Texas.
In a post on X, Elon Musk said a new law in California banning public schools from outing transgender kids to their parents was, quote, the final straw, calling it an attack on both families and companies. Musk, who himself has an estranged trans daughter, has been a vocal critic of transgender individuals, and in a biography blamed her progressive school for the rift in their relationship. Texas's conservative leadership have hailed the announcement. Musk relocated Tesla to Austin in 2021 and is himself a resident of the state, where there is no corporate or personal income tax.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
In this week's Onion Tips section, 5 easy ways to adapt your deplorable and parasitic existence for the upcoming Armageddon. Tip 1. Focus on preparing your home for any number of disaster situations, which still probably won't take your mind off of your impending death or the myriad mistakes you made in your short, pitiful life. Tip 2. Make sure your linens are clean prior to the upcoming catastrophe, as these are likely the very same sheets on which you will soon be slowly asphyxiated. Tip 3. Take some time off work and spend your last days free from the bonds of the oppressive machine that was just about the only thing giving you a purpose to your otherwise insignificant days. Tip 4. Spend your final waking minutes before the end of the world with your family, knowing full well you'd rather be doing a number of other gratifying yet completely depraved things. Right, sicko? In other news, a smitten foot fetishist thinks these may be the two. A woman and her gay best friend go on another one of their little adventures, and a dead daughter would have wanted a $220 million liability settlement.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. Thanks for joining us for hour number 3 of our show. We do 3 hours every night, Monday through Sunday, every night, 365 days a year. It's crazy. But we enjoy doing it, and we love to take your phone calls where you can tell us what's on your mind. I'm Chris. I'm joined in studio by
Lori
and Riley.
And like I said, hour number 3. But first, I'd like to thank Brett Perry for being an amplifier with us here on Free Talk Live. That means that when Brett Perry went to amps.freetalklive.com and signed up to support the show. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. Thanks to Brett Perry and everyone who supports us. Again, that's amps.freetalklive.com if you'd like to check out the perks and benefits of being an amplifier. Thanks a lot, Brett. We really appreciate it. It helps us do what we do. And
it does. Keeps the lights on here.
Keeps the lights on, helps us reach out and get on more radio stations, and that's a good thing. We have been talking about safety, but first we're going to go to the phones where we've got Cynthia in California. Cynthia, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
Earlier, y'all were talking about financial issues, and I wanted to bring people's attention to Lloyd Brunson of the Brunson Brothers is now saying that the Federal Reserve ginned up $9 trillion in digital money and sent it to foreign entities. And since you can turn digital money into real cash, and there's a huge discrepancy between the actual amount of cash that's been printed up by the Treasury and the amount of digital cash floating around, that would seem like a recipe for financial disaster for people.
It sounds like it.
It does. To me, it just doesn't surprise me at all. I've never believed that, like, they're actually keeping track of how many dollar bills they actually print or how many dollars they've added to, whatever account they do, and then they dole out to buy, treasuries and stuff like that. I've never trusted their numbers. I've always believed that it's much worse than we believe. So a story like that doesn't surprise me. Does it upset me? Yes. This is the problem with having a private entity in charge of a nation's currency. Would you agree with that?
Are you speaking to me?
I am.
Why? Yes, of course. And Brunson came up with a petition to send to Congress to at least let them know that they're on the hook.
Right.
Meaning that you've now been apprised, that y'all are allowing them to engage in fraud. And, of course, the fact the Federal Reserve exists is fraud on the Constitution, on the original Constitution. And in terms of what we're going to do about it, it would be great if we could get our sheriffs to agree that they're not going to levy on anybody who's losing their home or their business until this fraud is resolved.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, I back when I was a conservative Republican, I certainly believe, I love the idea of a constitutional sheriff, the ones that would just protect people based on their own common sense reading of the Constitution. Why would we not do that?
Well, we did have one, and he went from being a sheriff to being a member of Congress, and they found a way to nail him for check kiting, and he went to prison.
Who
and
was
when he
this?
came out, he was working on his farm. I think it was the name was Trumbull or something.
Okay.
Maybe? And he was on his tractor, unwitnessed, and it supposedly overturned and killed him.
Imagine that. Yeah. Don't think that if there's trillions of dollars on the line to businesses that some things are going to happen and they're going to look out for their own best interest. And don't think that there will never be someone who gets hurt because of that. That's the system we have, and it's a shame.
Well, whenever you have any kind of beef, real or imaginary, with the government, you are apt to just have an accident or become extremely depressed and kill yourself. These things just happen.
Sometimes you'll commit suicide by shooting yourself 2 or 3 times.
That's right. I mean, you really got to make sure you get the job done.
Exactly. These things happen.
You're very depressed.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, but I do appreciate your call, and I appreciate you pointing out shenanigans by the Federal Reserve and I if I can paraphrase, don't trust what you read. More people should be questioning this, and they don't. Cynthia, thanks a lot for your call.
I think it's funny how fast the government went from cryptocurrency isn't real money to, hey, wait, that's valuable. None of you guys can have this. We need all of the cryptocurrency.
We take all the crypto from everybody. It's valuable now.
Yeah, but it's going to be all better under Trump. I mean, Trump's come out as being, I'm very pro crypto. And
yeah, but
you've got a lot of crypto billionaires throwing money at his campaign.
He's still a politician, and politicians are going to do what politicians do. Politicians just politic. That's what they do. They don't.
No. Donald Trump is an outsider. He ran as an outsider.
No, he's not. He's not an outsider.
Well,
also, he's literally Jesus.
You can stay being an outsider if you just say you're an outsider, right?
No.
It doesn't work like that. Only punk works like that. If you say you're punk, then you're punk.
Right.
But it doesn't work for anything else.
Oh my gosh. And I read so many people going, man, I've got to support Trump because he's pro crypto. I'm like, where is the evidence of this? And will he be able to actually quell all those bureaucrats in Washington that don't want this to happen? I'll be very surprised. And a lot of people are on board. A lot of libertarians are on board with supporting Trump because he says, I'm going to free Ross Ulbricht.
I mean, yeah, it's a great thing he's promised, but is he going to fulfill that promise? I don't know. I mean, if you're willing to take the risk to vote for Trump that he's going to fulfill that promise, fine, take the risk. I'm glad you are. I'm not sure I'm willing to take that risk because I don't believe that he could. I mean, he definitely could. I don't believe that he would.
So my take is I am, at this moment in time, I am going to vote for Trump. Why? Because my vote doesn't matter.
You know,
it
you make a
does
good point.
not matter at all. There is no numerical way you can look at this and say, I will sway this election.
I'm not registered to vote, so my vote literally doesn't matter because I don't have one.
Well, come on. We'll get you signed up. Why don't you become a Democrat? we need one around here just to laugh at.
Wow.
Somebody to make fun of. I mean, come on.
I'd walk in and like just the looks I'd be giving to people around me with questionable things going on. They'd be like, she doesn't belong here. Get her out.
Exactly. She's a plant. I love what I do like about New Hampshire, and that's where we broadcast our show from, is the fact that we don't have to be affiliated. So since I moved to New Hampshire, on the voter registrations for my local voting, because that's all I really do, it's not Democrat, it's not Republican, it's unaffiliated, and I'm fine with that. I can vote any way I want.
I do like that you could be unaffiliated.
Yeah, and I think more states, I'm sure there is some form of that option, but I think in New Hampshire it's a little more clear. Are you a Republican, Democrat, or just want to be unaffiliated? Yes, please. That's all I want. And I really don't vote in national elections. I hate to break it to people, but I'll vote for my selectmen. I'll vote for the school board, and I'll vote for those things that actually make a difference in my life. And I vote for people I actually know, not names that I've never heard of, that I will never meet. And I know people that do vote, that just go in, and I was like this when I lived in Pennsylvania. There was such a huge slate of people I didn't know. If you live in a county with 100,000 people plus in it, you're not going to know those people. And I don't vote for some offices in my county because I don't know those people.
A lot of people, the reason they vote for all these things that they have no idea is they just vote down their party line because they're, I don't know, stupid.
That's the biggest abomination. And Pennsylvania had that too. You can go ahead and push the touch screen for all the people you want to vote for, or you can just hit Republican. And it just autofills everything.
That shouldn't even be an option.
I agree. Like, people should have to think about what they're voting for, who they're voting for.
And a lot of people don't. I mean, and I don't know where we got away from. And the fact that in New Hampshire and most locations we still use paper ballots, it's a crazy idea. But yeah, you do have to just fill out paper ballots, and you get to help count the paper ballots after elections. That's lots and lots of fun.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Said no one ever.
Oh man.
But I've helped out with that, counting ballots and trying to make sure the votes actually are the votes that were cast. I mean, I do think that's a good thing for people to do, and I guess I'm a little suspicious of automatic voting and I will say this, I mean, I'm not a Trump guy. I'm just not. And I didn't buy all the idea of the Democrats stole the election initially struck me as, well, I don't know, a lot of people really hated Trump while he was in, and I could see him losing this election. But as time went on, I heard more and more, and I saw more evidence of things that were just not right, like voting numbers jumping from 20,000 votes for Trump or for Biden to 320,000 in a time frame of like 6 minutes in some voting districts, and it was a bunch of ridiculous stuff that makes me question the sanctity of any election and whether votes are actually being counted correctly. So I like the idea of paper ballots. It's nice and easy. You got a big pile. You got to go through them. So we've been talking about, actually, I think we pretty much covered it. We'll finish this article up. We were talking about this reliance on this belief that safety is the most important thing and the only thing you must worry about is safety, and America's obsession with that. We've talked about children and parents being demonized because they let a 9-year-old use the New York City subway by himself. And we talked about the moral hazards of of a Federal Reserve keeping you safe
in the welfare system.
We're going to talk about a couple other things here. We're going to talk about COVID using public health and safety as a front. The Trump and Biden regimes, as well as most state governments, implemented one of the most blatant examples of wicked government action in history. People were locked down inside their homes, unable to even enjoy open spaces like parks and beaches. Children were encouraged to gaze into a computer all day instead of going outside or to school. The truly sick, those with cancer or other serious conditions, were discouraged from hospital visits to increase capacity for patients who seemed to have a minor cold virus, one that leaked from a research lab in China. That government would gin up a crisis out of nothing is expected. It was the lack of pushback from the public that was astounding. There was almost total mask compliance, even in conservative states and counties. Low-status individuals took it upon themselves to push the government's safety propaganda, the only chance for them to wield authority.
Do you remember when people weren't allowed to go be with their loved ones in the hospital?
I remember that, yeah.
And how little sense that made. Like, you live with this person all the way up to the point that they got sick, and now they're in the hospital, but now you can't be in the room with them anymore because reasons.
Right, and that was so sad.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember hearing that and thinking, how cruel can you possibly be to deny someone the right to visit a dying relative?
Mm-hmm.
Someone who undoubtedly means something to you.
We gotta keep everybody safe, Chris. Safety is more important than your dying relatives.
Yeah, and the thought that people and bureaucrats would believe that this is good policy. It was horrific. And
of course it was. It was meant to be horrific. It was meant to be horrific to destabilize populations and make them distrust each other even more.
Well, and what better way to get away with doing anything you want than having no witnesses?
Right.
Exactly.
Right. When an injection was offered, one of those trials who had no control arm, an absolute necessity in scientific studies, and blanket immunity for the manufacturers, people lining up to take it, then bragging about it. In human activity, risk is involved. Sometimes a considerable amount of people seek to manage that risk. One should strive for competence over it, not avoidance of it. This naturally entails confronting fear, especially the fear of failure, and using it for productive gain. The accumulation of skills, confrontation of hurdles, and commitment to a process with uncertain outcomes are essential for a life worth living. Riley brought that in. I thought it was a really good article, and I think it said what a lot of us have been thinking, particularly since COVID.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it strikes me as something important to remember that, when you obsess over safety, you just become anxious and paranoid. Like, you just obsess over, oh my God, am I safe? Am I safe? Well, take some deep breaths. You're safe. You're fine. If you're not at war, you're totally fine. If you're not physically being threatened, you're fine.
Right.
Well, and people, it's fine to be scared. It's fine to feel fear. It's fine to be anxious about things. It's totally fine. The problem is when you let it rule you, when you don't do the things that you want to do or need to do because you're scared or anxious. I hate flying. I hate it. It scares me.
Right.
It is like my number one thing is rabies, but flying it's up there.
Okay.
So, but I still have gotten on planes and flown. I just,
I'm uncomfortable. You're uncomfortable.
I'm uncomfortable
right?
while I do it. But I just do it because it's it makes the most sense.
Yeah.
To do. Like, if I have to be somewhere quickly, I'm just going to do that and fly.
And the saddest thing I see is, and I only bring this up, I'm not making fun of. Yeah, I am. I'm going to make fun specifically of somebody who wears a mask. But this guy rides by my store every day on a bicycle with a mask.
By himself.
Outside.
Uh-huh.
First of all, I'm trying to imagine. Our weather's been really warm lately. We've had temperatures in the 90s for I can't remember how many days.
A couple weeks now.
Which for New Hampshire, it's hot. I know you people in Texas and Arizona are going to
and
call
Utah,
me a wimp, right? And Utah.
90 degrees. I need a sweater.
At 90 degrees.
But it's humid. There's a difference when it's humidity. Like a dry heat is so different.
It is.
And we're not used to it either. Like, it's the land of the cold and ice.
But the pandemic, if there ever was a start to it, I mean, the official end of it was like, what, 2 years ago?
At least that's what Biden says.
And this guy is literally still riding his bike with a mask on. And
I've been seeing a lot of posts from people that saying we're going through a surge of COVID infections.
Yeah, I know. But didn't the government come out and say it's just a cold now?
Pretty much.
They came out and they were like, oh, you know, there's COVID going around. Here are the symptoms. Runny nose, coughing.
I'm not saying that there can't be, I'm not saying that there isn't long COVID symptoms. But what I'm suggesting is that, you know, you can't control a population because people are going to get sick and die. It's
gonna
tragic.
happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, it's just, unfortunately, the problem of living in societies, people get sick and die. We can't protect everybody from everything.
Well, these people that are still worrying about it at this point are scientifically illiterate because the amount of things outside that could possibly kill you are immeasurable.
Right.
There's so much stuff out there. Like, there's funguses and bacteria, and the world is full of dangerous pathogens.
And
body can start attacking itself.
Yeah, your body, one of your proteins in your brain could just fold and then you're done for. It's fine. It's fine.
But it's interesting because I think a lot of those people that were borderline hypochondriacs anyway, I see them in grocery stores. They're still masked. They're still wearing rubber gloves in some cases. Older people feel that, and I see a lot of older people still masked. And I think that they feel that, you know, well, now that I'm getting a little older, I mean, if any respiratory ailment could kill me. It's like, man, but what kind of life are you living? I mean, are you just not able to take a breath of fresh air?
I don't want to get sick.
I don't either.
I don't go out and if I see someone coughing, I'm like, you want to make out? But right. I avoid people who are sick. Physically, showing that they're sick.
That's generally what we do. We avoid
that's
people
just
who
what
are
you
sick.
do. But you can't just live in a bubble.
Right. I wash my hands before dinner.
Right. Exactly.
Crazy talk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's things that you can avoid with, we run a convenience store, and part of that is doing a lot of food service. We make sandwiches and stuff like that. So we're kind of hyper about washing our hands all the time, and that's
fine.
That's fine. I mean, it's okay, and that a lot of that habit has kind of instilled itself up.
Just don't use antibacterial soap.
Well, it's kind of crazy that through all of COVID, we were right in front of the public. We never masked, and yet we never got sick.
I was working really somewhere where it was lots of tourists a couple months before COVID.
Right.
And we all got really, really sick.
So that's interesting. I've heard that from so many people that before COVID became a thing, that's that
the
winter,
whole place.
And it was everywhere. Like my son was working at ski resorts, and he's like, man, we were all down for 2 weeks, and there were people around here in Keene, New Hampshire, where we broadcast from. Everybody was sick.
Everybody was sick for a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks.
And then afterwards, it's like, oh, there's this new thing coming out of China. I'm like, I think y'all already have that.
Right.
It's been with us for a while now.
I don't think this new thing is really that new. And then they found out that, yes, there were examples of COVID in wastewater going back 6 months before COVID became a thing. And, there was no surge in deaths, and it's easy to blame it all on COVID when you label every death COVID, because
they did do that.
They did a lot of that.
Yeah. Anyone who just died who had COVID in their body,
right,
no matter what they died of COVID.
Exactly, because a lot of hospitals got money for treating COVID patients. 603-283-6160 is our number. Give us a call. This is Free Talk Live.
Are you dipping into savings to pay the bills? I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Many Americans did squirrel away that relief money Uncle Sam sent during the pandemic while we weren't spending on this and that as we quarantined. Still, hitting the piggy bank for day-to-day expenses is scary and fundamentally unsustainable. Notable exception, your credit card balance. It's double-digit debt, and your bank is paying, 1% interest on your savings? Slay that plastic and pay cash for what you need by making smart trade-offs about what you want. Example, Yahoo Sports estimates it costs $253 for a family of 4 to go to a Major League Baseball game, unless they go after an early dinner at home. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. Another high-profile Democrat is now calling for US President Joe Biden not to run in the race. Representative Adam Schiff from California says Biden needs to pass the torch to a younger generation. FSN's Caroline Malone reports.
In a statement reported by US media, Adam Schiff of California said a second Trump presidency will undermine the very foundation of our democracy, and I have serious concerns about whether the president can defeat Donald Trump in November. He's just the latest lawmaker to insist the Democratic Party finds a replacement for Biden after a wave of concern about his bad debate performance in late June. Many people have expressed concern that leaving Biden as the candidate could also lead to many Democrats losing seats in the House and Senate votes in November's election. Caroline Malone, Washington.
At the Republican Party convention, Donald Trump's vice presidential pick, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, will give Wednesday night's headline speech. It's a major moment for the first-time senator, who's been in politics for just 2 years. At the 4-day event, Republicans have rallied around Trump just days after his attempted assassination. FSN's Simon Marks reports from the convention site in Milwaukee.
To put this into its kind of historical context, what we witnessed last night at the Republican convention is extraordinary. Back in 2016, when Donald Trump first became the Republican Party's presidential nominee, he couldn't get leading Republicans to attend his convention, much less endorse him and speak at it. And yet here we are now, 8 years later, and Donald Trump has the entire Republican Party is uniting around him.
Meanwhile, the U.S. House Oversight Committee has subpoenaed the director of the Secret Service, Kim Cheatle, to testify before the committee on Monday. It comes as the U.S. Department of Homeland Security opened an investigation to look at how the Secret Service handled security on the day of Trump's attempted assassination. The agency's been criticized for security failures that led up to the shooting. The United Nations is warning that further regional spillover conflict in the Middle East is increasing by the day. On Wednesday, the United Nations Security Council convened a high-level meeting on the ongoing crisis in Gaza. As FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from the UN in New York.
Addressing the Council on Wednesday, the UN's Chief de Cabinet, Courtney Rattray, stressed that nothing can justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. He says that in recent weeks, Israeli military operations and fighting have intensified across the enclave. Security Council members on Wednesday again called for Council resolutions for a ceasefire to be implemented. Sergei Lavrov insisting the war must end and the collective punishment of the Palestinian people stopped. However, the US told council members that Israel and Hamas have now both agreed to the ceasefire framework.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. 603-283-6160 is our number to call, where you can take control of the airline. We still got time. You can give us a topic and we can talk about it. But in the meantime, are you tired of oppressive rules and moderation of the big tech social media sites? Our Mastodon server is social.freetalklive.com and can set you free. Mastodon is free, open source, decentralized, and federated. Multiple applications are available on iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, and Linux. So look for us at social.freetalklive.com. That's social.freetalklive.com. This is Chris. I'm in studio with
Lori
and Riley.
And Lori, we were kind of joking around during the break, Jess. Let's do Lori's ACAB of the week. Lori always brings in stories, and I love her for doing it, but they're always pointing out some problem with law enforcement at some level. So
it affects everybody's life.
It does affect everyone's life, but tonight Lori's brought in it's about cooking. It's a cookie recipe she's going to read to us.
Mm-hmm.
How does this cooking recipe start out?
Well, it's from libertarianinstitute.org.
Oh.
And the title is FBI requests 20-year wait before producing OKC records.
Of course it does. I knew.
Of course it does. Yeah. We gotta take the time to hide all the important data so you don't get access to it.
So this time it's not like the cops are bastards. It's like the big cops are bastards.
Indeed.
So I'm changing it up.
AFAB?
Yeah, AFAB.
I like it.
I think that's like assigned female at birth, though, so you can't.
I can't appropriate that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's been about 9 years since Utah attorney Jesse Trentadue filed a Freedom of Information Act request for records about a CIA asset and FBI informant who helped fund the Oklahoma City bombing, as well as for records about a neo-Nazi bank robbery gang also involved in the attack. Tired of waiting, Trentadue sued the FBI over the matter in February, demanding the Bureau to produce the 69,375 pages of documents that it's holding. But now, the FBI wants to take another nearly 12 years to fork over those documents to him, which means that it would take at least 20 years for the Bureau to comply with his initial Freedom of Information Act request.
20 years.
20 years.
20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just repeating that for emphasis, but the idea that if you've filled out all the forms and they have Freedom of Information laws that require them to produce these things in a reasonable amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
I assume that there's something in there saying a reasonable amount of time. All the ones that I've looked at, mostly at the state level, talk about reasonable amounts of time.
I mean, who decides that it's reasonable? They do.
In New Hampshire, it's pretty much 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
You have 3 days to produce if you file for something that's being protected.
Maybe they have like a lack of agents due to unprecedented times, and so it's taking a really long time.
Maybe
like longer than usual call volume.
Maybe they have plenty of agents, but they're all out trampling the rights of regular citizens. They don't have time to get the paper together. I get that.
Maybe, yeah. Such a slow production rate is unacceptable, Trentadue said in a Tuesday court filing. The FBI proposes to process these records documents for release to plaintiff in monthly increments of 500 pages over a period of 11.5 years, he said. If the court accepts the FBI's proposed snail-pace processing of these materials, plaintiff will be close to 90 years of age when he finally receives all of them, he said. He has already waited almost a decade for these documents records, with the FBI having made no effort during the interim to produce them, and should not have to wait another 11 and a half years to receive them. Trentadue has been suing the U.S. government for OKC bomb-related records for nearly 30 years, ever since his brother was murdered in a federal penitentiary. The complex story of how the death of Trentadue's brother relates to the OKC bombing can be read in, and then there's a link to an article from Mother Jones.
Okay.
Trentadue's latest lawsuit seeks records on FBI informant and CIA asset Roger Moore, not the James Bond actor, and the bank robbery gang, the Aryan Republican Army, which he says was an FBI front group. According to Trentadue's lawsuit, Moore was an FBI informant as part of the Bureau's 1980s and early 1990s era Operation Punch-Out, which was designed to identify and apprehend surplus dealers that bought and sold government property stolen from the Department of Defense facilities in Utah.
So I'm still trying to wrap my head around these excuses. And this isn't just like Freedom of Information Acts, the government loves to drag its feet on anything they feel uncomfortable about.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just we don't feel like providing that, and we're just not going to, or we're going to delay. But the idea that you can have, a Freedom of Information Act and do everything you possibly can to thwart it, really kind of, it's telling, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to share information with citizens, even though you're bound by law to do so. So you're using every possible loophole you can use to delay it. And that's sad.
Yeah, it's just because they want everybody who is involved to be dead
Right.
by the time it's revealed.
Well, they want people, I think more importantly, they want all politicians who would face blowback to probably be out of office.
Or dead.
Yeah, or dead.
Mhm.
And that's a shame. I mean, in reality, that's what we're still facing with JFK stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, why is this stuff not all available, all out there? Why aren't 40s and 50s records on UFOs not out there?
I mean, if you have nothing to hide, then you shouldn't have any problem just letting us see.
Well, you're trying to use their own argument against you. No, you can't say anything like that. Yeah.
Sounds like they have something to hide.
Exactly.
Furthermore, Moore built patrol boats for use by the U.S. Navy in the Vietnam War, as well as speedboats for the CIA, according to Aberration in the Heartland of the Real, historian Wendy Painting's PhD thesis turned book about OKC bomber Tim McVeigh. As for the Aryan Republican Army, Trentadue believes that was an FBI front group that also helped fund the bombing. Trentadue's Tuesday filing elaborated further on the ARA's connection to McVeigh. During 1993, 1994, and 1995, a gang known as the Aryan Republican Army, or ARA, robbed banks and armored cars in the Midwest. Timothy McVeigh participated in some of those robberies and is reported to have used money obtained from these crimes to help fund the bombing of the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City on April 19th, 1995, he said. According to Peter Langan, several members of the ARA assisted McVeigh in carrying out the bombing of the Murrah Federal Building. No hearings have been set yet in Trentadue's lawsuit. I wonder if he's going to suddenly,
I hope he doesn't have an accident.
have an accident.
Yeah.
You can't have an accident.
Fall down a
Oh yeah.
fall down
You
a mine
never
shaft.
know, because the FBI likes to have staged accidents. Like the Epstein guy who didn't kill himself.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of controversy around the Oklahoma City bombing since it happened. I mean,
it was a long time.
That was in the 90s.
Yeah, it was 95.
1995, and
Was that like 5 years ago?
No.
to me, yes.
30 years. 30 years ago.
Wow, 30 years.
Yeah, and I think government is just embarrassed by some of the things that government does, and it just never wants to admit how horrible things they do were, and how horrible things happened that they could have prevented if they had been doing their job that they said they were doing the whole time. I'm still waiting for. I haven't heard the FBI come out and say they had the Trump shooter. We were watching him.
He was on our radar.
He was on our radar.
That's the words. He was on our radar.
Thank you. Say the words.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just wouldn't surprise me at all. And they just try to hide their incompetence and their disregard for laws, unless they're trying to enforce the laws they like. They don't like any laws that threaten them in any possible way.
Does Trump have to use Secret Service, or can he use his own private security company?
So yeah, I don't think they ever have to take Secret Service.
I don't think I would. If I was the guy running against the guy who is the boss of these guys, I don't think that I would take them as my security.
It does, man.
It does lead to some scary outcomes if you do.
So have you guys been following any of the right seems to be pushing the DEI hires of female?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Have you seen any of that?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that, but the male officers in Uvalde didn't go save the children, so...
Well, those are police officers who are notoriously fat and lazy.
So I think what
special bleeding
they're mostly up in arms about is So around Trump, as soon as the shooting occurred, you had these big, tall, hulking Secret Service agents surrounding him, which is what I've always thought Secret Service was. Like you absolutely, if you're going to be a Secret Service agent, you wanted to be big and imposing. So your body was larger, so there was a better chance of a bullet hitting you other than the person you were guarding.
Mm-hmm.
You throw yourself, your body, in front of a person so they don't get hit by a bullet, you do.
Right.
I get that part. And in the videos, there were 2 women.
3.
3 women?
3 women.
Okay. The first one I think I noticed was I don't know how tall she is, but she looked like a fairly petite blonde. She was kind of in front of, and you could tell she was trying to shield the president, but she was like her hands over her head, like putting her hands on the shoulders of the other 2 agents. And
they absolutely looked like diversity hires. Like they had no place there. They couldn't get their guns back in their holster. They were all frazzled.
And I get that. And I'm talking about the one agent who reminded me of Melissa McCarthy,
the
actress. A little, I don't want to say heavy set, but she was a little heavy set. And
thick.
And
frumpy.
And she was, right after the shooting, struggling to get her handgun back into its holster.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw that. I was like, yeah. But I've done training to try to put myself in difficult situations to holster and to aim, take a shot, and then reholster my gun. With some guys I used to train with, we would put our hands in an ice water bath for 60 seconds and then perform various tasks. Maybe it was draw, shoot, reholster. Maybe it was disassemble and reassemble a firearm after you've numbed the hell out of your hands.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good way of simulating. The idea was to simulate the effects of adrenaline on you and how badly
that's
it screws
actually a
you
really
up.
good idea.
Well, it really screws you up.
Mm-hmm.
And adrenaline will do that. And I get that. So when I saw the Melissa McCarthy looking girl kind of struggling to reholster her sidearm, I kind of understood that has to be like the most stressful situation I can imagine myself being. First of all, I'm being entrusted to guard the life of this person by throwing my body in front of a bullet. I probably wouldn't take the job in the first place, but if I would, I can imagine that being very stressful. But then I saw video today of her at the other end of the trip after they had picked Trump up and they took him to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And the agents, some of the agents and Trump went into the hospital. She was left outside with the Suburban or whatever vehicle they have. And she's outside of the vehicle. Now the person you're guarding's inside the building. Nobody's around. She's just in front of the window while this guy's filming her, trying to holster her gun. I can't buy the whole, it's adrenaline. And
do you think she's just a poor hire, or do you think it's possible that she's play acting a Secret Service agent so she can get close to Trump?
Well, I think, like I said, I wouldn't take that guy's employees to guard me, that they probably were like, who are our worst agents?
Yes.
Send them to Trump.
And that was, I don't know if this is true. Somebody was saying that Trump's agents, most of them got swapped out because of a bunch of stuff going on with Biden, and they had to move over onto Biden's staff, and then Biden sent some of his people over to Trump's staff.
Who are the worst ones?
Exactly. I mean, I don't know if any of this stuff's true. There's a lot of conjecture out there. There's a lot of finger pointing, but there's an awful lot in this, just like Oklahoma City. You got to look at with a skeptic's eye. And I think you know, this all goes back to at least JFK when he was shot. I mean, now you've got 10,000 Zapruders all filming, and we're able to pick apart every single. I've seen angles on the shooting of Trump that I didn't see day one, and now I've seen a gazillion.
And I haven't seen any of them, so I don't know what to believe.
See, there you go, playing the blind card again. Why do you do that?
Because I'm blind, Chris.
Okay.
I mean, I got to play that card every once in a while.
You don't do it often, which I do appreciate.
So beyond that, though, there was the people that said they saw the shooter up on the roof and told the cops and nothing happened.
Yep.
And how did he get up there with nobody doing anything about it?
And apparently he had purchased a ladder at Home Depot. This is stuff I just read today, so I can't even fact check myself. Allegedly, he bought a ladder at Home Depot. Evidently, he didn't bring it inside, but he was able to climb on top of an air conditioning unit and make his way up onto the roof.
And they saw him walking through the protected area. I forget what they called it.
Right.
With a measuring device to see how far away something is.
A rangefinder.
A rangefinder.
Yeah, he was walking around outside of the magnetometers, which are the metal detectors right before you go in. He was acting suspicious then, and people noticed him acting suspicious.
And he was on our radar.
Yeah. Well, the way the story goes at this point seems to be that, local officials like the Butler Township Police Department that were there thought this guy was acting weird, and they never said anything over their radios to anybody in the Secret Service, which to me still makes it a Secret Service fail, because you should have drilled into these guys. How many times does government say, if you see something, say something? Did all you guys miss that?
Also, shouldn't they have noticed? If the police noticed, then shouldn't the Secret Service have noticed something at some point?
So I understand the idea of security in rings.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have outer rings and you have your tightest security on the very most inner ring, and that to me is the Secret Service on the grounds.
Yeah, but they have snipers on the roofs.
They do, and stuff like that.
And they can't see somebody else on another roof, which they could obviously see because they shot him. So how did they not see him up there before they shot him?
I kind of get that too. First of all, nobody ever gave him an indication that you got to check out that building that was supposedly under the control of the Butler Township Police Department, who was supposed to have control of that building. The Secret Service says that they were supposed to have their own sniper up there. They never did. And they were the ones responsible for clearing that building and making sure that nobody was up there. So it may end up being a he said, she said type of thing.
Everyone failed. So, I don't know. I don't know what to say about it other than the cops failed, the Secret Service failed, the shooter failed. They all failed. Everyone failed. It was a big failure.
Failed. I was at home. I didn't do anything.
I was also at home.
Either, so I didn't fail. I did come in during the show and hear you guys talk about it on Saturday. So
I don't think, some people are like, oh, it was staged. I don't think that that's the case because people died.
Yeah.
So that seems not saying that they don't kill people.
And they did fake stuff.
Yeah, and they do fake stuff. But
it's I jokingly said to a friend of mine I was just texting with as soon as this thing happened, I'm saying, I know what happened. It's like Trump sent Rudy Giuliani into the crowd with two shoes to bang together really loud. And then Trump takes a ketchup packet and smacks his ear with it. That's what happened.
But people are like, oh, it was a fake setup. Do you think that Trump found a 20-year-old good enough to just clip his ear out there in the world and just moved at the exact right second to do it? No, obviously not. That's not what happened.
I know you're going to be shooting in my head. But just wing it.
Just barely miss.
Barely miss.
Yeah.
You play a lot of Call of Duty, right?
Right.
You can do this.
And I have impeccable best timing. Best timing.
Best
so I will
timing
move
ever?
my head at just the right moment.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's crazy. And to me, there's all kinds of unanswered questions. Local police and Secret Service, they've got to answer for this because everybody saw it. Everybody saw it. And that's what I find, as much as I gripe about social media and things like that, the fact that we can all be witness to a horrible event, but we can really see if something untoward happened. And in this case, it's just another example of horrible, horrible government incompetence at the local level or at the federal level. Take your pick, but it was incompetence nonetheless.
Imagine if anybody else did their job as badly as the government does their job.
Yeah.
You would not stay employed.
Anywhere.
If you just didn't do your job. Like, oh, you're a cashier somewhere and your boss comes and you're like, I lost the cash register. I don't know where it went, unaccounted for. I'm sorry.
I'd help you look for it, but I'm on break. I've got this week off because it's in my contract.
Yeah, or you're a public speaker and you go to your speaking event and like you're mumbling and no one knows what you're saying and you're saying nonsensical things.
And they say,
but
Mr. Biden,
and then,
it's this way.
And then you're still employed afterwards. Like,
Yeah.
no, none of these things.
Yeah.
What happened?
And that's a problem. There is no profit motive. There is no incentive. The only incentive is do just a good enough job that you don't get fired from government.
Mm-hmm.
And
which is nearly impossible.
In the end, you will get taken care of for the rest of your life.
The only time you get fired from government is when you're like, hey, they're doing some corrupt stuff over here that everybody should know about.
Right.
And then the way you get fired is you jump off a building or fall out a window or something.
Or shoot yourself three or four times. Yeah, it's insane. It is insane. And I was thinking the Butler County Fairgrounds were another fairgrounds I had been to in Pennsylvania, but I've never been to those particular fairgrounds.
Nice alibi, Chris.
And I'm sticking to it. Yeah, it's. I don't know how many. I guess it's a perfect storm of getting enough incompetent people in one place to do incompetent things all at the same time.
You know that song? That's like the national anthem now, right?
Oh my God!
Clown show.
What is the name
Welcome
of that
to the
song?
circus.
Yakety Sax.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That one.
The Benny Hill theme song.
The Benny Hill theme song, yeah. New national anthem.
Yeah.
Called it.
That's a perfect national anthem.
I like it. I don't know. And I don't know if Trump's going to come in and go, we're going to be better at this stuff. Because according to Trump, everything is going to be better.
The best.
Everything. The best. And will he fix that? I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I get the exuberance. I understand why people get exuberant over a political leader, but
and he's charismatic.
And he is. But it's kind of like you're falling for the guy who's keeping you distracted while the other guy picks your pocket. And
that was like my introduction to presidents, because in school, Bill Clinton was like the president that was coming up when I became aware enough to have any concept, and they had us like do a mock vote in school.
Right.
And like the reason that everybody was like, oh, Bill Clinton, was because he was charismatic.
Yeah.
Like charisma is a very good sales tactic. And when you're selling yourself, that's the best sales tactic.
Yeah.
I won't disagree with you. And at that point when Clinton was coming up, being a good diehard conservative Republican, I mean, we had all these scandals that we saw starting before Clinton even got in office. It was just like, man, this guy looks corrupt.
Everyone overlooked it, though, because he played the saxophone.
He did. He played the
good smile.
saxophone and smiled. Thank you for joining us on Free Talk Live. Hey, we'll be back tomorrow night like we are every tomorrow night. Taking your phone calls. Have a good night and peace.
Peace.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we